Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Alright, here we go. Alright.
Yeah.
Objection!
Yeah!
Oh, I assure you, it's quite based. Alright, here we go. I assure you, it's quite based. It's the Ace Attorney ranking.
Yeah!
It's all the cases. Woo! Yes, the time has finally come. We've reached my personal ranking of every single Ace Attorney case in the series. If you haven't been following along with the previous 3 rankings, all you really need to know is that Ace Attorney is one of my favorite franchises on the planet. And I had an absolutely amazing time replaying every single game in the series in order to determine which ones I adore and which ones I abhor. You already kind of know most of the ones I hate if you watched the previous rankings though. This video will largely contain the same segments as those previous rankings for the first, second, and third cases. But obviously, it'll contain brand new segments that cover the 4th, 5th, and occasional 6th cases across the series. I've included timestamps in the description for each segment and even earmarked which ones are new if you only want to see said new opinions. Or you can just watch the whole ass video. It's entirely up to you. Oh, and one more thing. Yes, no more pussyfooting around. Each and every segment will contain full spoilers, which is another reason the timestamps in the description will be your best friend. Feel free to skip the segments on games you haven't played and just jump straight to the ones you have. So with all that said, let's get started. This is gonna be a long one, but not as long as the time you spend cross-examining Quercus alba, so it won't be too bad.
Disappointment in the game of life!
I don't even know where to start. The Adventure of the Unbreakable Speckled Band is one of the most unfathomably boring and terrible cases I've ever played in Ace Attorney. I don't even know if that's a hot take or if there's a general consensus on this one. I've seen other people who hate it, but then others still who think it's a fantastic emotional powerhouse of a case. And like, no, your best friend died and you have been accused of his murder. And yet there isn't a sense of weight to it at all because of how goofy and insignificant it all feels. I don't feel any of the same emotional weight I felt at, say, the death of Mia in case 2 of the first game. There, it really felt like your life got a little emptier and you really cared about proving sweet little Maya's innocence. Here, I mean, we already got accused of murder in the first case. Now we gotta prove ourselves innocent again? I feel a little bad for Susato and her musings about Kazuma leaving this world. But then it just gets really goofy with her constantly performing the Susato takedown on you. And that's not even getting into Herlock Sholmes, who, okay, yes, he is the best part of the case, obviously. But I feel like his antics really distract from what should be a very urgent and personal case. God, why am I even calling this a case? That's the thing. The main issue that makes this by far one of the worst cases in the whole series. You don't go to court. Ever. This entire case is just investigation with no trial. And it doesn't even do what the Edgeworth games do, where you still hear testimonies from people and present evidence against them. There is none of that in this one. You point and click at stuff. And then you point and click some more. And then you talk to people. And Ryunosuke will lift up his hands to show off his handcuffs 20 times throughout it all. That is the vast majority of the gameplay loop in this godforsaken case. Well, since it's only investigation segments, they probably make up for that by having you go to all sorts of cool locations, right? Nope! You get to investigate Kazuma's room, the room next door, and the hallway between the 2 rooms. That is the entirety of what this case has to offer in terms of the point and clicking. As you can imagine, it gets really, really, really old. How's the story itself? Oh, I don't know, pretty shit. Turns out it was all just an accident, cause this Russian ballerina was worried Kazuma was gonna rat her out, so she pushed him and he accidentally broke his neck and died. And now he never comes back ever. That's great! What a nothing culprit with a nothing motivation. I just played this case and I can't remember a single thing about her or her stupid burly seaman friend who covers up for her. Even if he contributes to the tonal issues, Herlock Sholmes is by far the only redeeming thing about this case. It's great seeing how much of a dick he acts to you. I love seeing him hanging off of various objects. The part where he starts singing My Way is so good. And by far his greatest contribution to this case is its only fun gameplay segment, that being the Dance of Deduction. This is a really novel gimmick, having him present wildly off-base theories about what's going on, only for you to correct them and have him swoop in and act like he knew what he was talking about the whole time. It's fun, and I especially love scanning the environment or a character model to find the solution you're looking for. But like, the gimmick would have been great in a real case that didn't solely rely on it. This would be like if they introduced Athena's mood matrix segment, and then they just had that be the only thing in the entire case that isn't just pointing and clicking and talking to people. It's like, no, you need a trial to go with this. You need testimonies to contradict and present the right evidence to. Otherwise, this just becomes a boring, tedious, bafflingly low-stakes feeling slog where the Dance of Deduction is the only thing you have to look forward to from a gameplay perspective. If this was just a really good, interesting, or emotional story, then maybe I would rank it a little bit higher. But I think it's just pretty standard and flat from a story perspective, and abysmal from a gameplay perspective. This case left an insanely bad taste in my mouth the first time I played this game. And while Case 3 absolutely picks up the slack and finally starts to hook me in, I can't say I'm a fan of the first two cases in this game. Especially this one. I hope the next second case we have to rank isn't equally as boring. It is equally as boring. Maybe more boring, honestly, but hey, at least it has trials. You can't say that about this one.
I'm the Joker, baby.
The Monstrous Turnabout is a case about a village that fears a yokai monster, and they have a pro wrestling show, but there's a merger that's threatening to... Huh? Sorry, what happened? I must have dozed off. Oh, right. The Monstrous Turnabout. This might genuinely be the dullest case in the entirety of Ace Attorney. Legitimately, the only times I was ever interested in what was going on is when my Blurbos Simon Blackwell and Bobby Fulbright were on screen. It's a deeply cruel twist of fate that this is the case that gets to introduce Simon Blackwell, whereas the otherwise highly popular and beloved Magical Turnabout gets stuck with introducing Nayuda. If these cases could just switch prosecutors, that would be so ideal. Then again, this case should count itself lucky it gets to introduce such great characters, and does it pretty damn effectively. Because without Simon and Bobby, this case is F tier. I'm genuinely so serious, I can't stand it. The thing is, not a single one-off character this case introduces is among the worst characters in Ace Attorney history. Everyone here ranges from fine to kinda bad, but sure, I guess I can tolerate them. The problem is that they're stuck in one of the most uninteresting stories ever told in the Ace Attorney series. It really shouldn't be that boring. I mean, there's pro wrestling, a mysterious yokai legend, apparent demonic possession. How does none of this coalesce into a case that grabs me in the slightest? I wish I knew, man. It's genuinely really hard to articulate why this case is so bad in a way that isn't true for a lot of other cases I hate. I can tell you why Turnabout Big Top is bad, we'll get to that. But I think a big part of why this case is so low for me is because, at least with your Big Tops or other similarly abysmal cases, I feel something, even if it's a profound sense of anger or despair. The Monstrous Turnabout makes me feel absolutely nothing. I feel like no one in this case has any motivation for you to latch onto. Your client is Damien Tenma, an obtuse mayor who frequently pretends to be demonically possessed in a gimmick that never charmed me once. I'm sorry. Maybe Apollo can find the motivation to fight for his client so that his daughter Jinxie won't be left all alone. After all, Apollo and Jinxie are such good friends. Oh wait, no. Trucy is really good friends with Jinxie, and Trucy is unceremoniously yeeted from relevance relevance in this case, and the entirety of Dual Destinies. Just make Jinxie good friends with Apollo or Athena if you're not gonna use Trucy. Oh my god, is it that hard? Even without a pre-established connection with Jinxie, you would hope you get endeared enough to her over the course of this case to want to help her. But I never did. She just keeps cowering out of fear of yokai, and she slaps a charm on Apollo in an animation that probably would have gone really hard on the 3DS, sure, but just gets really old in any other context. I never cared about Jinxie because it's hard to pick out any semblance of personality other than extreme cowardice. It's like having to defend Yonobo in court. Like, would I really give a shit about doing that? No. Phineas Filch is fine. I like his little sliding animation, and it's kind of cute how he keeps stealing shit from everyone. Nothing to write home about, but a slightly bright spot in this case, I suppose. But then there's the culprit. Oh, brother. As nebulous as a lot of this case's problems can be to describe, I think one of the most obvious problems with it is the fact that they reveal who the killer is in the opening cutscene. I don't know why they did that. It makes sense in the first cases because you're only going to be there for like 2 hours tops usually. The first cases aren't about big mysteries for you to solve alongside the characters. They just teach you the mechanics of the game and get the overarching story in motion. The monstrous turnabout is anywhere from 5 to 6 hours, and a ton of that time feels like a complete waste because, yeah, we know who did it! You showed us! Why did you show us it was him? Why do I need to waste my time dicking around pursuing other possibilities? Maybe they figured Florent Labelle was just way too obvious of a killer, considering the first time you encounter him, he's literally instructing Filch on what to say in court the next day. How did Apollo not immediately suspect him of being the killer? Aside from that, he's just, I mean, look at him, man. He's a joke. Apparently, overemphasizing random words is a good gimmick for an Ace Attorney culprit now. The entire time I was dealing with him, one thought went through my mind. I think I misread white. And not to spoil too much, but I have a lot of problems with red white. So it's awesome to get a killer who's just great value red white. Maybe that's why they're the only 2 second killers in the series who get revealed immediately. Other than that, this case is just needlessly confusing for its own good, but not in an exciting or cool way like Rise from the Ashes, for instance. So much of the time is debating which characters are secretly the pro wrestler Amazing Ninetales, which characters are secretly the demon Tenma, if the demon Tenma actually is real, which of course it's not. Stop wasting my time. I actually would have given this case so much props if it just casually revealed, yeah, no, demons are real actually. I don't know, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Ace Attorney. But of course, they aren't. So this case is just frustratingly dull and drawn out for no real reason. For such a fantastical setting with unique concepts, the fact that the conflict in this case stems from a municipal merger genuinely bores me out of my skull. This case literally only gets mildly interesting at the very end, with a neat reveal about what Tenma actually is, and a pretty clever way you catch Florent Labelle. I like how they hide clues in plain sight, like his changing hair color, which you assume to just be a quirky gimmick, until it primes you to realize that the white hair in the mask is actually his since the color washed out. That's pretty cool. Other than that bit at the very end of the case, I got nothing. This one just sucks. Yes! The only time I ever felt any joy during the interrogation was from talking to Bobby Fulbright. I initially thought he was just a trying too hard copy of Gumshoe, but I really came to love him over the course of the game. He really sneaks up on you in that regard. So on this replay, yeah, I really loved him here. And the only time I ever felt any joy during the trial was from Simon Blackwell. I love this man a normal amount. He is genuinely so cool. This case legitimately does a great job of establishing him and how easily he can manipulate people. So I guess it does deserve props for really nailing these 2 character introductions. Otherwise, this is such a slog. The entire time I played it, I kept asking myself, do I even like Dual Destinies? The answer is yes. I think it's got a lot of really cool elements and mysteries. Plus, Athena and Simon are real all-timer characters for me. But oh my god, is this a nightmare to get through. Just replace this with the Orca case, and you've basically solved like half of Dual Destinies' problems. I know that seems like a rude and dismissive thing to do to the monstrous turnabout, but you gotta remember, the ends justify the means.
Damn candy store is closed. Bunch of pedophiles!
So what is the worst third case in the series. Decisions. Do I go with the cliche answer and say the circus pedophile case is the worst one? Or do I go with the newer punching bag on the block and give this bottom spot to the Blue Badger bullshit theme park misadventure? I would say it was a close race, but it's not. I'm sorry, Turnabout Big Top earned its infamous reputation for good reason. I'm not about to claim this case is some misunderstood masterpiece, or even a mixed bag with plenty of good elements. There are certainly some decent elements at play here, but they are drowning in a sea of sheer awfulness. Let's just get this one out of the way. Pedophiles. Regina Barry is the belle of the ball at this circus. She's 16 and involved in a love triangle with the 21-year-old Max Galactica and the 31-year-old Ben. Oh, actually, excuse me, it's Ben's puppet Trillo who's in love with her, so that makes it okay, actually. This case only gets worse the more I play it. It's unbearably icky, and there's just so much time dedicated to this love triangle on the first day of trial. Hell, even Phoenix and the judge start crushing on her at various points. It's like, yeah, lower age of consent in Japan, yeah. But here's the thing, you gotta account for that when you're localizing it into English. Just make her 18 and it's... okay, still kinda creepy, but not illegal at least. Wouldn't it be great if this was the only problem with the case? Oh boy, it's Mo the Clown. Oh boy, I can't wait to press his statements. Oh wait, you can't do that because he's really annoying and he says bad jokes, and you get penalized for that. Bro, I'm just trying to solve a murder here. Why are you holding me responsible for what this f***ass clown does? It's a rare case of the gameplay being equally as insufferable as the writing. Like, normally when the series has terrible writing, you can at least count on the gameplay to be standard and inoffensive. Not the case in Turnabout Big Top, however. God, is he insufferable. He has a bit of an arc on the last day where he finally starts to be responsible and think about what's best for Regina a bit. But he's so fucking annoying before then. Oh my god. At one point he asks, why does everyone cry when they eat Mexican pizza? And the answer is, because they are in the cafe teary-eye. What? What the f does that mean? How is that related to Mexican pizza? Guys, I'm starting to think this is a bad case. The crazy thing is, when you get down to it, the actual murder is pretty creative and interesting. That final day when you cross-examine Acro, free of the dumb clown gimmicks and pedophilia, was actually pretty decent. I like seeing how a wheelchair user could commit a murder from his 3-story window, and his motivation and backstory are legit pretty sad. I'm not exactly sympathetic to him with the whole wanting to murder a child thing, but he's a pretty decent culprit, and unraveling his plan, especially figuring out where the bust is the slightest of lights at the end of this miserable tunnel. That's the thing about this case. It's just miserable. The characters are so bitter and they all just hate each other. Aside from Mo, who's just doing his dumb jokes in the corner, and Regina, who doesn't even know what planet she's on. Max is an obnoxious showboat who everyone despises. Ben and Trillo are incredibly horrible. Hell, I don't even know where to start with them. And Acro just gets consumed by this horrible grudge against someone who very clearly doesn't know how the world works through no fault of her own. It's like, do any of these guys even like each other? Is there any camaraderie or positive feelings in this circus, aside from people just lusting over the 16-year-old? It's a case where it feels like no one wants to be there, least of all you. It's just a slog talking to the most obnoxious, creepy characters with the most annoying music playing. And oh, you can't press most statements, but you gotta press this specific statement, and then you gotta press this other one. But don't press this one or you'll get a penalty because f*** you, welcome to Turnabout Big Time. No amount of West Clownadelphia or accusing the judge of hiding the murder weapon will save this case from how unforgivably awful it is. Certainly the worst third case, in spite of it having some funny moments and a few decent elements at the very end. Plus, I'll give it this. Turnabout Big Top is not boring. Far from it, in fact. I'm never gonna forget this case for the rest of my life. Yay?
Exhibit A, Woody was kidnapped.
You know, the first time I played the Kidnapped Turnabout, I didn't get the hate. I mean, I didn't like it, but the way people talk about this case as if it's the most abysmal one in the entire series, I don't know, I was kind of expecting worse. I mean, at least the setting is creative and cool, being at this amusement park with a Wild West area and a haunted house. That's something, right? And we get to meet Kay Faraday for the first time. A very fun character who's solidly introduced here. We also meet Shilong Lang, who, I don't love him, but he's fine, I don't know. I was ready to rank this case a little higher than most people do, but then I replayed it, and I started to realize that I just kinda can't stand it. Suddenly it occurred to me, hey, having a cool setting doesn't mean shit if you don't do anything with it. Why should this awesome theme park setting revolve around rides and more than 2 attractions, when instead the mystery could revolve entirely around blue badger costumes? Don't you love the blue badger? Don't you want to spend hours of your life familiarizing yourself with the blue badger lore in order to determine which of these dumbass kidnappers was wearing which costume? What a great mystery. And yeah, Kay is fun, but you know who's not fun? Every other character in this stupid ass case. They inexplicably bring back 2 of my least favorite characters in the entire series. Mike Meekins and Windy Oldbag. One of them I could live with, but 2? Kill me. You're supposed to be motivated to solve this mystery in order to prove Mike Meekins innocent. As if anyone would ever care about doing that. Even Edgeworth literally says he doesn't particularly care what happens to Meekins. Like, yeah, he gets it. If they needed a cop character to get accused of murder in this Wild West area, maybe you could have brought back, I don't know, the Wild West themed officer Jake Marshall, who debuted in the same case as Meekins. Hello? Fortunately, neither of these clowns are in this case for too long. Unfortunately, neither is Emma, whose inclusion is entirely pointless, outside of just letting you use luminol testing. As if there wasn't any other character who could provide that for you. Nope, she's the only one. Okay, this case uses returning characters horribly, but they make up for it by having some of the absolute worst brand new characters in the whole series. Lauren Pops is just kind of an annoying idiot. Ernest Amano is an asshole who turns on you for an entirely nonsensical reason. And Lance... Oh man, have I seen way more than my fair share of Lance Amano hate in my time. He's commonly referred to as one of the worst culprits and characters in the entire series. And yeah, but here's the thing. He's an unlikable coward who throws his girlfriend under the bus as a murder suspect and kidnaps himself in order to get ransom money out of his father to pay off his debts. I should despise this sniveling little weasel. But here's the real kicker. I don't care about him because he's just boring. He doesn't have any fun, hateable animations. I can't really get a read on his personality like I at least can for Lauren and Ernest. Like, Roger Rettins is hateable, for instance. But that guy has actual personality, and you love to hate him. Here, Lance is a scumbag, and he has 0 personality. The actual worst of both worlds. The case is also so poorly paced. After Lance stumbles onto the screen in the middle of your investigation, you basically unravel the whole mystery through 6 straight cross-examinations with Lauren, Lance, and Lang. It's agonizing. Such a poorly laid out and amateurish way to present this mystery. And then the case ends with an investigation of the haunted house, and after you investigate a little bit, that's it. Lance just folds. You don't even have a final cross-examination with him or anything. How hard would it have been to just put this investigation segment in the middle of the 6 cross-examinations? Genuinely, who wrote this? Also, did I say an investigation of the haunted house? Silly me. I meant an investigation of a recreation, since Lance's father buys the haunted house in order to prevent you from investigating it and having his son found guilty. Well, if he's such a loving father who doesn't mind obstructing justice for the sake of his son like this, why did his son feel the need to stage a fake kidnapping? Clearly, your dad would have just given you the money if you had just asked. This case is a real masterclass in not making you give a shit in the slightest. I don't care about Mike Meekins. I don't care about Lauren and her estranged relationship with her father. I don't even care enough about Lance to hate him. What a waste of my time. The only reason I'm putting it above Big Top is because the setting is marginally more fun and because there's no pedophiles in this one.
Does this mean we're going back to the beginning?
The first turnabout, more like the worst first turnabout. Yeah, I'm sorry, but from a critical perspective, this case kind of sucks ass. I obviously have very fond nostalgic memories of it, and I wanted to give it a little bit of leeway for being the first case in all of Ace Attorney, but Damn, what is this, a baby game? For some reason, the Ace Attorney devs have this asinine idea that you can jump into the series with any game. Which, that's a whole other can of worms we're not going to get into. But because that's their official stance, the first turnabout does not necessarily have to be the first case you play in the entire series in general. You could potentially start with a game that features an actually good and interesting first case that lasts longer than 30 minutes. By the way, that's not an endorsement. You should start with the first game if you've never played any of them before. Anyway though, if the other starter cases felt as minuscule as this one, I would definitely give it a lot more leeway. But unfortunately, it's kind of extremely hard to give this one any credit whatsoever, aside from it just being the foundation that every other case built upon. It's like Super Mario Kart. I respect it, but I was honestly bored from going back to it. Okay, let me phrase my indifference to this case in a more positive manner. The first turnabout is adorable. It's really cute how simple and undetailed the writing is. It's funny how every single contradiction might as well have a neon sign attached in your court record, blatantly screaming at you what the evidence you need to present is. I can't even give this case too much credit for its characters, because aside from it being kinda funny how nervous and unprepared Phoenix is, on top of a little backstory tease of him and Larry's friendship, we really don't get too much out of these guys. Phoenix is okay here, but I don't really get much attachment to Mia out of this. Larry isn't really that funny here. The judge and Winston Payne are completely stiff and humorless. Honestly, Frank Sawit is kind of the best character in this case, and he's not even all that. His animations are just pretty funny, especially the epic toupee throw. That's a great indication of the wackiness to come in the rest of the game. Overall, it's not a drag. It definitely doesn't overstay its welcome, which is a huge problem in the worst Ace Attorney cases, but it just isn't much of anything, really. It's as tutorial as tutorials come. And while you can say that about other first cases, they still manage to be a lot more involved with a lot more intricate characters and plots. Here, Frank Sawit is just some random burglar who killed this lady because he was caught in the act. Riveting. The thinker clock is pretty cool, and the time zone difference is a nice explanation for things. And this case is a nice way to give you some instant gratification before throwing you into the more involved cases to follow. But yeah, overall, this case doesn't exactly hold up. It's pretty lame. I'm not gonna act like it needed to be some grand masterclass in first cases, considering this is the literal first Ace Attorney case ever written. But at the same time, I can't use that as an excuse to rank it higher than it ultimately deserves. Sorry, first turnabout. Frank saw it was better in that one Investigations 2 case.
I guess you're gonna miss the panty raid.
I cannot begin to tell you how bad of an impression Turnabout Corner left on me the first time I played it. I immediately pegged it as one of my all-time most hated cases in the series. And while I've kind of come around on some elements of it, which are legitimately solid, I still think it's a pretty bad case. Everyone always hypes it up by talking about what a cool idea it is for you to solve various non-murder mysteries, and then see how they tie into the actual murder you find out about a little later on. Yeah, that is a cool idea on paper. In practice, however, it just means the first half of this case is largely extremely boring. We gotta find who hit Phoenix with a car, even though he was barely injured from it, so it's not really that big a deal. We gotta find this guy's noodle stand. Oh no, not the noodles. Won't somebody think of the noodles? We have to find Trucy's panties, which... oh, we will get to that. There's just so much mundane stuff you have to do on the first investigation day that you don't even get to meet your client, Waki Kataki, until the very end of the day for like 10 seconds. It makes it really hard to get emotionally invested in the struggle to prove him innocent. Well, that, and the fact that he's genuinely one of the most obnoxious characters in the entire series. He's a douchey wannabe cool child who talks in charmless, outdated slang, and I never once cared about him. His medical situation is really fucked up and scary. And all I could think was, man, I can't believe they wasted such a good premise on a character I don't give a shit about. Genuinely, I would put Waki in the bottom 10 worst Ace Attorney characters of all time. And the sad thing is, he's not even the worst character introduced in this case. No more beating around the bush. Let's talk about Wesley Stickler. Maybe the worst Ace Attorney character ever. He starts out as a boring stick-in-the-mud student who copies that windy old bag thing of talking really fast that stopped being funny 3 games ago. And if this is all he was, then okay, fine. But no, he's the panty snatcher. You see, Trucy does a magic trick involving a pair of panties prop. And Wesley is so enamored by this magic trick that he steals the panties of this 15-year-old girl to unlock their secrets. You also can't even say, oh, he's not into that in a weird way, he just wants to understand the magic trick. Because he also steals this other lady's panties. Those panties aren't magic. What's the excuse there? This guy is just an unfathomable creep who makes Trucy visibly uncomfortable when we meet up with him later in prison, where he belongs. Nothing about his shtick is funny. And it's made even worse by the fact that we waste an entire damn day of court on him and his panty obsession. Holy shit, is this an absolutely painful experience. I never want to see his face again for as long as I live. Once you get past these atrocious elements, which, trust me, is a very difficult ask, you also have to deal with a ton of elements that feel reheated from other better cases. We have a defendant who insists that he's guilty, which makes our job insurmountably difficult. You know, just like in Rise from the Ashes with Lana. We have a sweet, innocent-looking girl as the culprit, who turns out to be manipulating the man she's dating in order to serve her own nefarious purposes. Wow, good job, Apollo Justice. I've always wondered what dollar store brand Dahlia looked like. God, this case is so unbearably boring when it isn't filling me with pure rage. But to its credit, there are some good elements at play here. Even though Alita Tiala is a pretty boring culprit, I have to admit, that last day in court with her is pretty solid. I especially found the way she pulled off the murder, being inside the noodle cart and all, to be really creative. It is neat seeing all the elements of those initial mysteries from the first day finally pay off in the ending. And while every other one-off character in this case is either pretty forgettable or one of the most abominable creations in the history of gaming, there is one I actually really like, and that's Guy Eldoon. His design is fun, his backstory is interesting, I like the gimmick with the harmonica he occasionally plays. He's just a cool side character and the only home run this case hit after missing with all the other ones. Okay, but let's also be fair and give this case credit for introducing its main characters very well. Trucy and Clavier both make great splashes here. I love Trucy's adorable enthusiasm, and Clavier is great and a very different kind of prosecutor. One who teases Apollo, but ultimately feels a lot more emotionally mature than any of the prosecutors from the original trilogy. Like, he already only cares about the truth and isn't here solely to antagonize you. That's pretty different and cool. Oh, and I absolutely adore the Apollo Justice Trilogy version of Emma. I never really cared for her in Rise from the Ashes, because she kind of just felt like a science version of Maya. Here, it's such a cool progression to her character to see how jaded she became after not getting her dream job. She's way more interesting here than she was in Rise from the Ashes, in my opinion. The mini games you do with her were fun. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. This case definitely has its moments, and it's not the worst thing in the world. But man, does it feel like it when you're talking to Waki or Wesley. An absolute misfire that brings the momentum of Turnabout Trump to a screeching halt.
Woman, you are one giant lump of coal!
The Adventure of the Clouded Kokoro is just one of the lousiest mysteries in all of Ace Attorney. I mean, there's not even a murder. There's just a lady who was stabbed and ended up unconscious. Lame. I want to see people die. Nah, I don't really care about that detail too much, especially since Olive Green is a great character in the other case she's used in. The thing that's actually holding this case back is that it's just really boring. You barely do any investigating during the investigation segment. It's just non-stop talking to people with only one actual piece of evidence being uncovered. The rest of it is just handed to you at the trial. What is this, turnabout storyteller? The one aspect of the investigation I did like was the dance of deduction. That's as great as ever. Plus, you get to meet major characters like Gregson and Iris, even if they don't really do much in this case. This is the 4th case in the game out of 5, by the way. There's also the defendant, Soseki. I really do not like him. His gimmick of striking a bunch of poses as he makes alliterative statements is really annoying. He's more hyperactive cartoon character than actual sympathetic clients. And obviously a lot of characters in the series are like that, but this specific brand of comedy just does not charm me in the slightest. I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunity to focus on Ryunosuke's inherent desire to defend one of his fellow Japanese. There's a nice moment or two where Soseki talks about the hardships he's endured in this new land, but there just isn't enough of that from him. He just keeps on striking his dumb poses. Please make him stop. Well, Soseki isn't my cup of tea, but at least we get to spend a lot of time with the Gyarados. Everyone's favorite characters. John is pretty whatever, but Joan is seriously the worst. You know what they say, domestic violence is funny when women do it. You want to see her pour scalding hot tea on her husband 50 times? Well, do I have the case for you? Once the unbearably dull investigation segment is over, it is at least somewhat enjoyable to pit the jurors against each other in the trial. And Pat and Rolly are very cute and likable characters, even if you spend way too much time pressing the majority of their statements. I do like uncovering the mystery of why Rolly tampers with the crime scene, which is much more satisfying than the answer to the actual stabbing itself. Turns out during one of her domestic abuse fits, Joan threw a knife at her husband and then it fell out the window and stabbed Olive Green. It was just an accident. No one was trying to murder her after all. That is the dumbest, most babyish resolution to any Ace Attorney case in history. What is this, Layton's mystery journey? What is so wrong with there being a maliciously intended murder in a series known for that? I don't mind if you want to subvert expectations somehow, but there are cases that do that in creative and interesting ways, like Turnabout Reclaimed. And then there's shit like this, where the why done it is non-existent, and the how done it is stupid and contrived. It's just a dreadfully dull case, with enough decent elements and no outright awful parts to propel it below some of the others. But man, do I never want to play it again. The single best part is the cameo from Shamsphere, because it reminds you there are way brighter days to come in this duology.
I'm back in the fucking building again!
As someone who experiences a lot of stories in both movies and video games, I've gradually come to the conclusion that there is not a single more important part of a story than the ending. It doesn't matter if a story's beginning is amazing or terrible. If you can at least stick the landing, the chances are I'll look back fondly on your story as being a worthwhile experience. And likewise, if you fuck up a story's ending, it's more likely than not that I want nothing to do with that story ever again. Case in point, I struggled for a while to determine what my least favorite game in the Ace Attorney series is. I don't think a single one is outright bad, but some are absolutely weaker than others, and I had a tough time deciding between a couple of them for the bottom spot. But on replay, it couldn't be more clear which one of these games deserves it the most. It's Investigations 1. And at least 90% of the blame for that comes from the fact that it has the worst final case in the entire series by a landslide. Turnabout Ablaze. Now, this isn't even the worst case in Investigations 1. Obviously, we already talked about the far more awful Kidnapped Turnabout. But in a way, this one is even more excruciating. It has some genuinely great moments that save it from coming in at the absolute bottom of the list. But I nonetheless think I would sooner replay a lot of the cases ranked below this one. Turnabout Ablaze is stunningly boring, finally bringing the overarching smuggling ring plot of the game to a close, and making me realize, wow, I could not give less of a shit about the smuggling ring. There is zero emotional investment in the overarching plot here. The most we get is Kay wanting to avenge her father and carry on the Yatagarasu name in a noble manner. But we resolve that before the excruciatingly long and mind-numbingly terrible final battle with Quercus Alba. The most annoying, yet shockingly bland final culprit we've ever had the displeasure of doing battle with. He's kind of become a meme icon for reasons we'll soon get into. But does he have any appeal as an antagonist outside of the memes? Yeah, I love Quercus Alba Dating Simulator as much as the next guy. But that doesn't mean I want to stay up till 4 a.m. in-game and in real life trying to hopelessly in vain take down the real guy. He doesn't even really come in until the last third. We only get a couple of brief cameos from him, and he never appeared in any other case. Before we even get a chance to learn much about him at all, we gotta deal with Larry Butts and Windy Oldbag shenanigans. Fucking kill me. Under no circumstances should Windy Oldbag be anywhere near a final case. Larry, fine, he's childhood friends with Phoenix and Edgeworth or whatever. But come on, can you please just get rid of her already? Someone should put you in a box floating down the river, Grandma! Anyway, there's a bunch of boring investigations in this boring dual embassy with boring characters. For some reason, there's a second Mask to Mask now. What a true failure of imagination this game is. I barely even remember anything that happens in the first half. It's just a dreadfully uninteresting experience. Then it turns out Shilong Lang's assistant Sheena was secretly Callisto Yu the entire time. I'm gonna be honest, this middle section is actually kind of excellent. The confrontation with Callisto, from the reveal to the subsequent action-packed struggle, is easily one of the coolest parts of the whole game, and it makes for a more than satisfying follow-up to the events of Turnabout Reminiscence. I think the reveal of the true identity of the Yatagarasu is very cool and makes a lot of sense. Plus, Kay finally getting to help take down her father's killer makes for a satisfying emotional payoff. It's hard to overstate just how much the game really shot itself in the shoulder by not just making Callisto Yu the main villain. Especially when the actual main villain, Quercus Alba, is just some guy! Some fucking guy we never met before! Who cares? This isn't a compelling main villain who's supposed to be behind everything. It's just some random asshole! Oh, but you know what? I think I spoke too soon. He does indeed have extraterritorial rights. So that's pretty epic. Do I even need to explain what else is wrong with this fucking case? It's become pretty infamous at this point that your battle with Quercus Alba goes on for so long, and for no good reason. Shilong Lang shows up and strips him of his ambassadorhood and extraterritorial rights at the halfway point of your confrontation. But there's still over an hour of bullshit, weak-ass, dumb testimony to go through. You just keep grilling him over every last minutia of what he was doing. Then he finds another stupid method to weasel his way out of it. And then you have to wait for Larry to chime in about his Steel Samurai performance. Or Windy Oldbag to randomly offer you a bag of hot dogs that conveniently has the blood Quercus Alba spilled, which landed perfectly on the rising sun of the Japanese flag. Oh my god! All the way off, game. This is kind of the perfect case study on how not to build a case, especially the final case in a game. I seriously never want to do this shit ever again. It is so lucky the part with Callisto Yu is so compelling. Plus, there are some other funny moments. Like, I enjoy seeing Edgeworth grapple with the fact that Larry is playing his hero, the Steel Samurai. You're not the one who is cool. It is the Steel Samurai who is cool, is a real all-timer line of his. I'll give the case that. But for the most part, I absolutely loathe this shit. I think I'm being more than generous with its placement, considering how much I want to punt Quercus Alba into the sun. Let's move on before I lose my mind having to think about extraterritorial rights for 1 second longer. I don't really know what the consensus on this one is, but me personally, I just can't get into the right of Turnabout. It is so damn boring to me, and it really shouldn't be. This is your grand reunion with Maya, her first appearance in the series since Trials and Tribulations. Or actually, I guess since the Layton crossover, but shh. It's also a chance to further flesh out and explore this new kingdom of Kurain, and set up all the characters and plot threads that are gonna get paid off in the game's finale case. All of that stuff, the world building and putting the pieces in place for Turnabout Revolution, that's great and really interesting on replay. It's just the actual case itself is really boring. Oh wow, you won't believe it. Maya got accused of murder again. I don't know why we needed to do this a 4th time. Instead of the stakes feeling super high, it's more of a really again moment. And the murder itself, or sorry, the two murders themselves, I honestly forgot there was a second one, aren't particularly interesting to unravel. That is, until the very end. Okay, this is actually pretty different and cool. Turns out the second murder was actually committed accidentally by the wife of the first victim. And in order to get her off the hook, the victim killed himself and then framed Maya for both murders. Bit of a dick move that made it a bit hard to sympathize with him, but okay, that's a neat story. And it's even neater because Maya actually channels this guy in court. He really creeps me out with how flexible he gets with Maya's body, but you know what? That was pretty novel to see. For like one testimony, and then I went back to just not really caring all that much. I'm sorry, all the pieces are in place for this to be a really compelling case, but there's just so much holding it back. Mainly, I don't find the new characters that interesting. And the names they give them? Trust in me? Believe in me? This is the only case where the Ace Attorney localizers may have gone too far in a few places. I'm supposed to take these guys seriously, right? Sorry I'm not wrapped up in the beautiful relationship of trust in me and believe in me. Oh wow. Even putting that aside, we hurl some pretty serious accusations at Believe on this last day of court. And she just doesn't appear until the very end after the jig is up. It's really weird. Like, I would assume she's here in the courtroom the whole time, but we never see her react to you accusing her of murder. Very odd choice. And I also just find her gimmick of using her husband's face to talk also very weird. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not getting wrapped up in her grief. I'm just kind of cringing at this. The first day of court is also a bit of a waste of time, even if we do get a fun new character. On my first playthrough, I was honestly convinced this guy was Larry Butts in disguise. Like, that's what he seemed like based on his demeanor. And I knew Larry was in the DLC case, so I thought this was his introduction to the game. Nope, it's a new guy whose amnesia gimmick is pretty pointless. And his name is That's a Rebel. See, because he's a rebel. So that's a rebel. Look, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm out. This case made me seriously doubt that Spirit of Justice was even capable of telling a story with this much political intrigue and maturity. This game is so lucky Turnabout Revolution won me over in the end, because I just could not take any of this seriously based on not only the character names, but the general tonal whiplash this case provides. Dats is a huge goofball who doesn't paint the rebels as serious people. Trust and Believe are way too silly for their own good, and constantly undermine their more serious moments. Even the last scene of the case where Dirk shows up in the flesh. It's honestly a really cool and dramatically enticing moment. And then Maya chimes in and says, "Hey Nick, what if there was a Steel Samurai show where he fights Dirk, the epic rebel?" Sorry, this case just temporarily made me lose all faith that this game could tell a serious story. It's not nearly as dramatically compelling of a case as it wants to be. And on top of that, it's just boring for a lot of long stretches. It's got some neat ideas, but I just couldn't get behind it overall. At least Rafa made for a pretty fun assistant with a very unique tone when talking to Phoenix. I also really enjoyed her in court as the prosecutor. Oh wait, that was Nayuda. Why couldn't Rafa have just been the prosecutor of this game? She's actually a good character. Oh well, not a fan of this one. Next.
Step into my office.
I'm gonna be honest, you guys, I almost forgot about Investigations 1 when thinking of all the first cases in the series. You might assume that's just because it's a spin-off, but like, I remembered Investigation 2's first case, so, you know. Replaying Turnabout Visitor for this video, at first, it kind of just felt like the absolute average for cases in this series. Like, nothing about it really stood out to me in a positive or negative way. And then it just keeps going towards the end. Not to the same drastic extent as a certain other first case we'll talk about very soon, but let's just say I was ready for Jacques over here to shut the fuck up after testimony number 2. I really don't dislike Investigations 1. It's a solid enough game, but man does it not know how to vary up its gameplay. The entire ending sequence is nothing but testimony after testimony from Sportsman. And since he's the only guy you interrogate in this entire case, I was already a little tired of him before this barrage of 4 different cross-examinations with him. He's not a bad character or anything, but he's not a great one either, which results in him really overstaying his welcome. At least he do be ballin' though. Aside from that annoyance, Turnabout Visitor is pretty forgettable. It's a fine setup with there being a murder and potential theft in Edgeworth's office, and you having to defend both Dick Gumshoe and Maggie Bird from suspicion. I think this was a solid enough way to introduce the Investigations game's unique gameplay loop compared to a typical Ace Attorney joint. I like seeing where Maggie ended up after the original trilogy, and her general incompetence is pretty funny. Checking the Steel Samurai statue in Edgeworth's office and hearing him ramble about Steel Samurai lore ignore is very fun as well. Me when Pikmin. And I guess now would be a great time to mention that Edgeworth and Gumshoe are two of my favorite characters in the whole series, and their dynamic specifically is one of my all-time favorites as well. Really, any time spent with my two lovable goofballs is a delight. But ignoring that and just focusing on the case itself, it's pretty standard without inspiring too much interest in me whatsoever. And eventually, I get really sick of it. Not as sick as I get of certain other cases in this game, but it's undeniable that this case's pacing issues are a precursor of what's to come later on.
Oh, banana.
I've seen a lot of hatred for the Lost Turnabout, with quite a few people ranking it as the absolute worst case in the series. And like, really? This? Yeah, it's not great or anything worth writing home about, but the worst case ever? To me, the worst case in Ace Attorney should be something that's so drawn out and tedious that it makes you want to die. The Lost Turnabout to me is fine but forgettable, and the few contentious elements that it has aren't really things that bother me too much. Like, okay, people rag on this case for giving Phoenix amnesia as a way of justifying the fact that he needs to relearn all the tutorials we already went through in the first game. Yeah, I get it. Amnesia is an often annoying plot device in video games, but I'm gonna be honest, you guys, it really isn't that bad here. Even though his memory doesn't fully return until the end of the case, he's basically back to his old self really quickly, to the point where the amnesia becomes less of an annoyance hindering the entire case, and more of just a cute temporary plot development. The other issue I've seen a lot of people take with this case is the culprit, Richard Wellington. Oh, he's a complete moron. Oh, he's lame. Oh, he's the absolute worst character in Ace Attorney. Guys, again, I don't know what you're smoking if you think that. Like, he's really just kind of average. I, for one, think it's funny to make the culprit of a game's first case a complete idiot who mistakes a yellow baseball glove for a bunch of bananas and grabs the wrong cell phone when trying to steal it back from you. The stakes are not high at all right now, so why shouldn't we get a dumbass goofball as our first opponent? I think he's kind of funny. His animations gave me a chuckle, and while he does do that whole windy old bag shtick of talking really fast that kind of gets old the more you see it, I don't know. Overall, he's really not an awful starter culprit. Aside from that, I like Maggie enough, and it's cute how she kind of becomes your Maya for the first half of the case until the real Maya arrives. Fun fact, excluding the Layton crossover, this is actually the only first case in the series where Maya appears. Like, huh. It's nice to see Gumshoe right at the start. Payne is a much more fleshed out and fun character than he was in the first game's starter case. And there's a ton of funny moments, like accusing Wellington of liking big bananas, exchanging business cards with the judge, and regaining your memory of every single character in the courtroom except for Payne. I don't know, man. I think there's more than enough to rank this case above the first turnabout. It just feels way better fleshed out and weirdly serves as a better introduction. Slightly awkward amnesia development notwithstanding. Pretty average in the grand scheme of the series, but wildly overhated for sure.
That's right. I am Kira.
So you know how Turnabout Corner was boring and had infuriating characters in its first half, and then it gave way to a pretty good trial segment at the very end? The Fire Witch is a better version of that, because it's only boring with average characters in the first half, and then it gets a really good trial segment at the end. I really can't stress enough what a drag that first half is, though. Since Layton v. Wright is laid out like a Layton game, with Ace Attorney trials sprinkled in here and there, its cases are exclusively trial segments with no investigations to be found. This not only makes most of the cases pretty easy since you don't have a lot of evidence to sort through, but it can also make them really damn repetitive and dull. Case in point, you start this case out by interviewing 4 witnesses at once, which is a neat new feature at first. But then you realize that these 4 witnesses are gonna be at the stand for the entirety of the trial. The only new witness comes in halfway through and joins the rest of them. So you're basically stuck with these fine enough, but rather one-note characters the entire time. This would be fine if there was new stuff to say about the case, but they just stretch out the discussion of the incredibly limited amount of details there are at the crime scene. Oh, Espella cast the spell and set these guys on fire. But wait, she couldn't have done it because she needed a scepter. But what if she was holding the scepter and then dropped it? Well, she couldn't have done that because she was holding something else in her hand. Okay, but what if she was holding the scepter in her other hand? Oh, well, that can't be the case because she was holding a bucket of milk in her other hand. Okay, but what if she dropped the bucket of milk and then picked up the scepter and then cast the spell? Oh my god, it's so boring! It just goes back and forth like that for 2 hours. It feels like you're in purgatory, trapped with these 4 idiots desperately trying to get their lame story straight, with a prosecutor who's just fine. I swear to God, Barnum is maybe the most standard prosecutor in the entire series. He's not bad. He's not great either. I just don't care about him. I'm sorry. The case picks up a little bit when the 5th witness swoops in out of nowhere. I genuinely really like this guy. I think he's super funny. There's also some other funny moments, like Phoenix asking for a fingerprint analysis, only to realize that nobody knows what fingerprints are, or Layton's iconic line, "It would seem that the concept of logic does not exist in this world." This case has some charming moments, but it's overall such a drab mystery, with not a lot of interesting possibilities in terms of how it occurred and where the contradictions lie. Until you start to figure out who did it, that is. I'm gonna be honest, I just assumed it was Amir since I figured he would follow the Ace Attorney trend of the culprit not being the first person you cross-examine. I figured delaying his arrival until halfway through the case meant that he was the witch. We can have male witches, why not?
Not witch, it's warlock!
But no, it's actually Kira, who's been here from the start. That genuinely took me off guard, and I really like the gradual reveal that one of the 4 idiots you've been grilling this whole time was the witch behind everything. She doesn't exactly have the best voice acting, but otherwise, she's pretty creepy, and I like taking her down. There are also some really clever aha moments towards the end here, like realizing that Amir hearing his name being called was actually Kira calling out the name of a similar sounding spell, or the revelation that the glasses she was desperately trying to find at the crime scene fell into the bucket of milk. It all comes together towards the end in a pretty satisfying way, with a pretty dark fate we see Kira put through. This case definitely sticks the landing, but man is it an absolute bore throughout the entire first half. Definitely not awful or even bad, but the very definition of a mixed bag. Out of all the cases in the original trilogy, the only one where I straight up did not remember how I felt about it before replaying it was Recipe for Turnabout. I think I liked it the first time I played it, maybe? All I know is on replay, it's just not that great. I saw a lot of complaints about it that I thought I wouldn't fully agree with, but yeah, I kinda do, I'm sorry. Victor Kudo is seriously annoying as balls. Not just because he's the typical perv character who you need to get information out of by showing him Mia in a maid outfit. Alright, but because he's one of those characters who you basically waste the entire first day of court on without making much progress at all. You just gotta deal with his antics as you learn very minimal information to progress the case forward. It's not as bad as Turnabout Corner in that regard with old Wesley, but it's still pretty annoying. And yeah, Gene Armstrong gets on my nerves. Honestly, the fact that he's a pretty bad gay stereotype doesn't annoy me nearly as much as the fact that he's French. Like, genuinely, reading his text boxes really gets old after a while, since they have to convey his French accent through them. I kinda get why people didn't like Bebe from Persona 3 initially now. These two alone are enough to make this case pretty insufferable. But on top of that, the actual murder plan itself and how it's executed isn't all that interesting. Like, staging a fake murder that's identical to the real one just for the sake of establishing a witness doesn't really hit that hard, coming off the sheer insanity of Luke Atmey's plan. I suppose it's worth mentioning that this case really is the odd duck in Trials and Tribulations that doesn't really contribute anything to the overarching story. Even the Luke Atmey case does a great job of subtly setting up aspects of the Fae clan that'll come into play later on. This case was originally written for the previous game, but cut and saved for this one due to a lack of cartridge space. And it kinda shows. I don't think it's fair to harp on this case's irrelevance too much though. I want to judge it on its own merits. The problem is that its own merits are kinda whatever. It's a pretty unengaging mystery with a couple annoying characters. But with that said, there are 2 people single-handedly keeping this case afloat and elevating it to average status. One of them is my man, Dick Gumshoe. I don't think it's talked about enough how this is one of his best cases by far. His crush on Maggie and extreme dedication to getting her proven innocent is genuinely so sweet. He contributes a lot to the defense here, probably because he's extra motivated to do so. For a Dick Gumshoe stan like me, there really is a lot to love in this case. The other great character in Recipe for Turnabout, I think you saw this one coming, it's Lisa Basil. What an amazing character she is. Just a completely irrelevant lady who works at the victim's company, doesn't get introduced until the second day of investigation, barely does anything, serves face, and leaves. Why did they put so much effort into her design when she barely has any reason to exist? Honestly, I kinda love it. Get behind me, Lisa Basil stans. Okay, but actually though, Furio Tigre is the other cool thing about this case. I don't even know if my love for him is unironic, and I don't want to know. He's just such a stupidly funny character. The fact that he managed to trick everybody in court with a paper badge and a haircut that resembles Phoenix even though no other part of him does. I mean, that's just so funny that I don't even care that it doesn't make sense. Every time Furio Tigre's on screen, you know you're in for a great time. Aside from them, Maggie's still fun, and Viola's kinda cool, I guess. I don't know though, I just found this pretty dull at the end of the day. Certainly not without its moments, but it might be the most obvious black sheep case out of any individual game in the series. I mean, at least with Turnabout Big Top, a lot of people also don't like the first case in Justice for All. Here, it can't be easy being the only not very liked case in your game.
My sister's
Dead.
Turnabout Sisters is a really good case until it isn't. I think the first investigation and trial days within this case are really good. Killing off Mia so suddenly is a genuine shock to the system, and you not only want to help her poor, sweet-looking sister get off the hook for this murder, but you also feel a special connection to it since you want to avenge your mentor. Compared to the subpar character introductions in the last case, this one does a great job of establishing major series players like Maya, Dick Gumshoe, and Miles Edgeworth, my king. He just keeps one-upping you with a new trick up his sleeve, and it is infuriating in the best possible way. April May is a very fun red herring villain to interrogate. She really sells the duplicitous, two-faced nature of a ton of Ace Attorney antagonists right from the get-go. And the bellhop is a pretty funny addition as well. It's also so fascinating seeing the charming, early installment weirdness afoot in this case. Like, Edgeworth tells Gumshoe he's looking forward to his next evaluation, but not like a salary evaluation like the running gag we see throughout the rest of the series. Plus, Maya just straight up calls you Phoenix in this case instead of Nick. That's kooky. Oh, and being able to accuse Marvin Grossberg of being Red White's lover is one of the funniest things in the whole game. Why don't more people talk about this moment? Yeah, this case is really good and engaging. Why is it ranked so low again?
What's your name?
Oh yeah, him. I'm gonna be honest, Red White is one of my least favorite culprits in the whole series, and easily one of the most disappointing ones based on his impact to the plot versus his actual capabilities. This dude killed Mia. He was involved in the public humiliation and discrediting of Mia and Maya's mother, and he basically has full control over the courts and police through his blackmail. And yet he's also a complete fucking idiot who I never felt threatened by once. Not only is his gimmick of using big, goofy words not all that interesting, but he shows up in court on the last day, completely goes against what his accomplice April testified happened, and overall has some of the easiest contradictions to point out, all of which get him hopelessly, embarrassingly flustered until Edgeworth can bail him out. It's pathetic. And I guess I could have lived with this on its own, but then with absolutely no build-up whatsoever, Maya suddenly gets the power to channel Mia, who just solves the case for Phoenix. She just tells him the answer. It doesn't even feel like this is his lowest moment and this is the Hail Mary we've been praying for. It's just, we were doing pretty good at getting Red White on the ropes already, but then Mia just shows up completely out of the blue to tell us, hey, flip over this receipt. I didn't buy the glass thingy until a few nights ago. Then she reads off the names of Red White's blackmail victims, which just instantly gets him to fold and confess to the murder. What kind of master criminal is he anyway? This is a load of barnacles. I also find it so disappointing that Edgeworth doesn't even really react to the fact that he lost his first ever case. This should be a very big deal for him, but the game just forgets to show his reaction. This genuinely might be the most abrupt ending to any case in the series, and I'm not gonna lie, it kinda sours the whole thing for me. Obviously, as you can see, this isn't the worst second case ever, but it's gotta be the most underwhelming based on its significance to the series as a whole. Mia Fey's killer should have been a memorable and cunning antagonist. I don't think that's an impossible ask for a second case, because a lot of other second cases in the series do have cunning and memorable antagonists. Whatever, thanks for nothing, Mr. White. You should just stick to being a chemistry teacher. Clearly a life of crime isn't for you.
Now prepare to serenade.
I'm gonna be honest, you guys, I like Turnabout Serenade. I really do. Does that mean I disagree with every single complaint leveled against this case? Nope. Every problem people have with this case is completely valid. It is absurd to me that nobody ever brings up the fact that the murder weapon was a revolver that can dislocate a grown man's shoulder. And yet we all just go along with the police accusing a 14-year-old boy of not only firing the gun, but carrying this grown man's body up to the stage and then passing out next to him. Are you people insane? See, thematically, this is supposed to tie into the game's overarching story about how flawed the legal system is, giving you justification for Phoenix's efforts to reform it in the next case. You're supposed to get a client whose innocence is blatantly obvious, to really highlight that the law process in this country needs to be changed. That doesn't mean I have to like how stupid it is. It's just kind of unbelievable. I mean, Apollo brings up the fact that Machi is tiny and thus would have poor aim, but somehow nobody ever brings up the fact that this gun, which Apollo says would break every bone in the judge's body if he tried to fire it, gave this little boy no injuries whatsoever. I could probably buy this insane lack of logic if the killer was a Damon Gant type who had considerable influence over the police, but instead it's just this one detective who isn't said to have any of that sort of control. Penis Hair Man is one of Clavier Gavin's bandmates, so you'd think he would have a strong reaction to finding out that this guy he worked with for so long is a killer. Nope! The biggest problem with Clavier Gavin as a prosecutor is that he is just so chill in almost every situation in court, including this one that should emotionally affect him a bit. This case actually shows off that by contrast, he's a huge perfectionist and diva in his other role as a rock star. That's a very fun dichotomy. Arguably, this is the best case in terms of showing off his character. And yet, I really feel like they dropped the ball with how calm he is with Dreydan. It also doesn't really make a lot of sense. Oh, how about the case just straight up telling you at the end of the first day that Dreydan is the killer? Lamoureux claims she heard his voice, basically giving everyone in court the answer, and then the rest of the case just plays that answer straight instead of making it a red herring. Why the hell would you do that? I wasn't even fully suspecting him at this point. I was a little sus of this man in the yellow hat that kept popping up randomly. But I guess it's cool for the game to just tell me who the culprit is with no build-up. Okay, well that sounds good to me. Is Dreydan a good killer? No, not really. Is Machi a good defendant? Also, no. Do I like this case in spite of all these elements dragging it down? Kinda. See, what you gotta understand is that if a case has good vibes with an intriguing story that doesn't bore me, I can kinda stomach a bit of gaps in logic, as is the case here. The opening is incredible. The vibe at this rock concert is just electric, and actually getting to see the victim die before your eyes and hear his final words is a really exciting change of pace. Hey, wait, why didn't Romain let us just say it was the Penis Hair Man? He's the one who shot me. Why didn't he say Lamoureux was the witness instead of saying it was the siren? Genuinely, how was this case written and finalized the way it was? I still really like it though, not gonna lie. The twists and turns really intrigued me. Like the twist about who was really blind was pretty wild. And even if it was a bit out of nowhere, I actually liked the whole cocoon smuggling plotline as a way of explaining why all of this was happening. Machi may be a little frustratingly obtuse, but I genuinely love Lamoureux. She's a sweet, intriguing, and ultimately extremely important character who I cared about saving Machi for the sake of. I also like how this case lays the groundwork for the Grimoires before that really comes into play in Turnabout Succession. Arguably, this is one of the most plot-relevant third cases in the mainline series. Using the soundboard is a pretty neat change of pace. And yeah, you know what? The fact that you have to watch that hideous video of 3D orange Clavier like 6 or 7 times in the last trial section honestly doesn't bother me that much. Believe me, I was mashing every single button hoping one of them would let me skip it. But at some point, I just couldn't help but laugh seeing this stupid, ugly thing for the third time in 5 minutes. It's so annoying that it wraps around and becomes hilarious again. Yeah, sorry if you wanted to hear me tear this case to shreds, but it honestly has a pretty intriguing story and a lot of elements I really enjoy. The bad things about it frustrate me too, just not quite as much as they seem to frustrate everyone else. I genuinely think this case has a lot going for it that people tend to ignore because its flaws are just so obvious and apparent. Like, it's hard to think of another case that just feels like it was written wrong to this extent. But I genuinely think there's enough of a balance between good and bad to make this a fine case. One that I can't really say is all that painful to go back to compared to some of the other clown shows. I guess I just like liking things. Sorry again.
6.5 hours later.
I absolutely hated The Adventure of the Great Departure the first time I played it. Like I said, the worst thing an Ace Attorney case can do, in my opinion, is go on for too long. And this is especially true for the intro case. Getting the pacing right is important since you need to hook the player in while also not making them wait too long to get the gratification of solving their first mystery. And for the past 4 years or so since I first played Great Ace Attorney 1, this case has been the poster child in my mind for agonizingly drawn out first cases. It left a terrible first impression on me. I was dreading reliving it for this video. And now that I've finally replayed it, damn, it was actually really good until it went on for too long. I feel like if you ended it after part 2, or kept part 3 in, but took out the duo of Baby General and Weird Old Guy, which, by the way, does anyone think these two look like Skyward Sword NPCs? I swear, this is the exact way that game's characters were designed. Anyway, just a little subtraction would have made this one of the best intro cases. It's an intriguing mystery, having you insist on the existence of a phantom woman no one else will admit is real, learning about a deadly poison with some of the most terrifying effects I've ever seen, and bonding with your buddy Kazuma in some of the most delightfully homoerotic courtroom shenanigans we've seen since Phoenix and Miles first went at it. There really is a lot of good stuff to this case. I haven't even mentioned how novel it is that Payne's ancestor actually seems successful, being a prosecutor on the Japanese Supreme Court and all. And this case especially makes Ryunosuke feel like the biggest novice you ever play as in a courtroom, since he's not a lawyer at all. But slowly watching him learn how everything in the courtroom works as the trial goes on is super cool and rewarding in a way no other first case is. It's easily the best growth exhibited by the main character in a tutorial case. This case also does a great job of orienting you in the setting and displaying how racist British people are to the Japanese, a major recurring theme throughout the rest of the duology. God, you know this culprit was so good, but then they made her racist for some reason. I don't know why the hell they would do that. It was just for some random, non-thematic reason. Oh, darn it. Anyway, I've been a little mean to this case for the past 4 years. It has a lot more going for it than most other first cases, and it's actually pretty well paced. Until part 2 leads into another to be continued. I was honestly on board with everything in this replay so far, but that's the moment where I finally said, okay, let's wrap this up. And then it just kept going. Oh my god, it was pure agony. First cases should not go on this long. It's justified in other cases since you break up the trials with investigations. But here, having to spend nearly 4 hours in the same location with the same culprit who we know is guilty, but it takes goddamn forever to actually prove it, all as Ouchie continues to fawn over her. Oh my god, I just wanted to punch him in his stupid face. And just when you think it's almost over for real this time, then we bring back the Skyward Sword NPCs? Are you kidding me? Overall, I definitely wouldn't consider this to be a bad trial. It's got way too many good elements for me to say that. It's just so damn tedious after a while.
I'll be your guide.
The foreign turnabout is a bit more in-depth than a typical Ace Attorney starter case, with this being both a blessing and a curse. Instead of throwing you straight into a trial like every other mainline game, this one elects to introduce the new Kingdom of Kurain, where you spend half the game. You get to form a bit of an attachment with soon-to-be defendants I'll be your guide. Guess what his occupation is. Additionally, once we actually get to court, we really take our time getting entrenched in the bizarro court system this country has in place, where lawyers are universally reviled, trials end almost instantaneously with no chance for the defense, and Gaspin Payne inexplicably is successful at his job. On my first playthrough, I was really engrossed in this case because of how new this all felt compared to every other starter case in the series. I mean, okay, the judge in Kurain is kind of just an exact copy of the judge we all know and love. And Gaspin Payne is here too, which, yeah, we'll get to him. But other than that, this feels drastically different from any other starter case because of the hostility you feel from all sides and the incredibly high stakes. Due to the Defense Culpability Act, if Phoenix can't prove all be innocent, both of them will be executed. That's how it is in Khura'in. A lawyer who defends a client found guilty will get that same sentence. Fun fact, when I was a kid, I thought that's how the law actually worked all the time. I thought if you say someone is innocent and it turns out they're guilty, then you were helping them, so you're guilty too. Turns out Khura'in operates on a law straight out of my 8-year-old brain. Anyway, I really feel the tension in the air as a result, and I didn't mind how long-winded the build-up was to the actual gameplay, since this is a lot to drop on us all at once. But replaying the case for this ranking, I feel like a lot of this could be condensed. It takes forever to actually get the case moving, not only due to all this exposition, but also the lengthy tutorial for the new divination seance gimmick. Now, I think this is a really cool gimmick, letting you view the victim's final moments and desperately trying to pick out contradictions in what is basically the most blatant evidence of what really happened you've ever had to deal with. It's a fantastic mechanic that sadly doesn't really feel satisfying here because they hold your hand through most of it. I know it's by far one of the most complex mechanics in Ace Attorney, but the game is so focused on explaining it that it doesn't really get time to shine within the context of this case. All of these elements add up to bloat a case that, on paper, really isn't that much more complex than a typical first case. It just feels like the foreign turnabout overstays its welcome by the time its culprit starts dropping his facade. Speaking of which, this might be a hot take, but I really do love this culprit. Peace, love, and understanding. I think his musical gimmick is pretty funny, and he probably has the best breakdown of any first culprit. But eventually, I get tired of dealing with even him, as well as the hostile attitude of the Peanut Gallery. They started out intimidating, but just kind of became annoying after a while. Nothing in this case annoys me more, however, than Gaspin Payne. They really flanderized him way too much. Like, instead of just being a cocky but bumbling buffoon, now he actively goads Phoenix into taking the case because he wants Phoenix to be murdered for humiliating him in court. This just doesn't seem right. I don't know. I can't imagine Gaspin Payne acting quite so callous and evil. And it makes his whole shtick a lot less fun. Really, what are the odds that a damn Payne weaseled his way into the Khura'in court system anyway? Couldn't we have gotten a new prosecutor for this case? It kind of goes against the whole brand new location for the series concept when we still have the same prosecutor and basically the same judge. Murderous Payne wouldn't even have been that bad if it just didn't go on forever and get really old. On the more positive end of things, I really like this clip of him saying, "Yeah!" That's something at least. At its core, this is a fine enough case. It has a fun culprit, a sympathetic defendant, it introduces you to Khura'in pretty well, and it has a couple solid surprises. But it really drags after a while, which isn't something you want your first case to do. Not awful, but it's one of the few tutorial cases where it feels like a tutorial, and that's not a great thing.
A bomb? In the Krusty Krab!
Fun fact! Turnabout Countdown is the first ever Ace Attorney case I ever played. Yeah, I completely forgot, but when I was like 16, I actually bought Dual Destinies on my 3DS and gave it a try as my first ever Ace Attorney experience. I beat the case and had a lot of fun, but then I just never played the rest of the game because I forgot. Oops. Anyway, fuzzy nostalgic memories aside, Turnabout Countdown is technically a first case, despite being the 4.5 case in Dual Destinies chronologically. It maybe overstays its welcome a bit, but not nearly to the same extent as Visitor, because there are at least 2 people you cross-examine instead of just 1. It's also a tad better than Foreign, because the first half isn't bogged down by extensive tutorials and exposition. Overall, it's a fine introductory case, with a lot of really cool and exciting elements that don't quite coalesce into something all that memorable. Basically, this case centers around a courthouse bombing, yet another tragic indication of the dark age of the law that we all live in. The culprit, Ted Tenate, may have caused some severe property damage in the process of covering up the murder he committed, but hey, the ends always justify the means after all. Overall, the bomb stuff is very exciting and cool for a first case. I mean, the law doesn't get much more dark ager than a guy literally threatening to blow up the courtroom unless they let him escape. Despite having some cool moments though, I feel like this case and its culprit don't quite do it for me fully. Ted is just a little bit too over the top, and he's starting to border on parody Ace Attorney character. At the very least, it doesn't feel like he should be the culprit of a first case. I also think it's ridiculous that nobody suspects him, but everyone thinks the most innocent looking girl alive is the one who rigged the bomb. I know we shouldn't judge an innocent looking book by its cover in this series, but I mean, like, come on, look at her. Additionally, I think it really speaks volumes that Athena gets to start this case out on her own, and then she barely gets to do anything before Phoenix comes in and basically takes over the entire case. Man. At least we do get our first mood matrix segment here. And oh my god, this is one of my favorite gimmicks in the whole series. I don't know why, but it is so fun to me. The colors light up and that stimulates my brain. But no, it really is so fun to have to pick out an inconsistent emotion. It complements looking for inconsistent testimonies so nicely. Overall, this is a solid enough and foreboding case. It just goes on a little too long, with a villain who might be a little too over the top, even for Ace Attorney. Oh, and the one part where you have to point out the tread marks from the bomb card going over Apollo's bandages pisses me off. That might be the hardest thing in any first case in Ace Attorney. Please tell me I'm not the only one who has stumped on that for a really long time.
Take me back.
Turnabout Time Traveler is kind of an overhated case, but at the same time, I can't really call it underrated either. It's just fine and inoffensive, not nearly as worthy of its DLC status as Reclaimed was, but it certainly did its job well enough at being a back-to-basics original trilogy-esque trial featuring Phoenix, Maya, Edgeworth, and Larry. Okay, sure. See, personally, I think if we were gonna revive anyone for this back-to-basics case, it probably should have been Dick Gumshoe, who was at least mentioned by Maya at one point. But yeah, his whereabouts remain unknown to this day. It's a little weird basking in all this original trilogy nostalgia, but then Emma is still the detective. I guess she is technically from the original trilogy, but still. I don't really like Larry in this case. He's as childish and annoying as ever. And I also just don't think Maya adds a whole lot to this one. If anything, she kinda acts a little too immature and hinders you occasionally. This is definitely her weakest outing out of the 3 cases she appears in this game. Excuse me, this trilogy. On the bright side, I honestly really like Edgeworth in this case. I think some people tend to say he's regressed here too, but I don't know. I think it's hysterical to have him constantly dismiss the idea of time travel and get flustered when he talks about how he'll never get married. I think the explanation for why he's in this case makes sense. And this is also the origin of his iconic quote, "Mr. Wright only makes that ridiculous face when his back is pressed against the wall." Okay, but how did bro know that? Other funny moments include the revisualization at the end when your first conclusion is he used the murder weapon. Oh, no way. And it's pretty funny how Larry's testimony is called "Nick is a jerk face." That's about it for this case though. Moving on. Oh wait, I guess I forgot to talk about the story and new characters. Yeah, it's pretty standard Ace Attorney fare. Soren and Ellen are fine, I guess. I do like uncovering the mystery of Soren's memory issues, and Ellen's animations are pretty funny. The first time you see them, by the 12th time it gets kind of old. The setting on the blimp is pretty cool, and the anime cutscene at the end is funny. However, if I really wanted to make a strong case for this case being higher, then the culprit needed to be a little bit better than this. I don't like pure snickety. I think it's really lame to just play the whole "the butler did it" trope out completely straight. Plus his transformation into this psychosurgeon just feels really played out and lame after we've had so many of these in the 3DS duology. His motivation is pretty much the same as the turnabout Reclaimed culprit again, but he's too cartoonishly evil to really afford any sympathy. I don't like this guy. He actually kinda sucks. I mean, bro pulled out the right to remain silent and doesn't say anything in his testimony, which is pretty funny. But then you ask him questions and he just willingly answers you. What happened to remaining silent? Dude, you really suck at this criminal thing, I'm sorry. And I just find the whole backstory with the accident to be convoluted. Like, was he the only surgeon available? Really? They didn't have more than one? And he curses Soren for surviving even though he willingly made the choice to operate on Soren first, despite noting that his injuries were less severe. I know Selena told him to, but she probably had a concussion. What the kind of surgeon are you, dude? The more I write about this case, the more it seems like I don't like it, but I didn't rank it too low, did I? It's got plenty of decently fun moments, plus the time travel element is a neat hook, and I like seeing how it applies to Soren. And it's sweet getting to work with this lovely odd couple. It's not a bad case at all. I mean, even Athena gets screen time. Oh wait, no. Phoenix forces her to help with Trucy's magic show at every opportunity, even though her mood matrix ability would be way more helpful to him than Maya, who just kind of stands around in court. But Athena wasn't in the original trilogy, damn it, so you're going to the magician mines. Yeah, I can't believe I almost didn't mention this. What an annoying aspect of this case. I could have excused this unfunny running gag if Athena barged in on the last day of court and did get her chance to shine with the mood matrix. But again, we can't have that because then there'd be no nostalgia. Remember Maya and Edgeworth and Larry Butts? Don't you just love Larry Butts? Capcom, either bring me Dick Gumshoe next time, or don't even bother with one of these nostalgia trip cases. You really don't understand what the people want, huh?
Hope he doesn't see right through me.
The adventure of the Blossoming Attorney is thankfully a hell of a lot shorter than the first Great Ace Attorney's opening case. And yet, it's less interesting. God, these games cannot catch a break with their openings. It certainly isn't a bad case, but it is very average. They don't immediately reveal who the killer is like a lot of first cases do, so I'm not going to dock points for the fact that it's pretty obvious who it is once you see them. However, part of the fun in first cases is figuring out how they did what they did. But this might be one of the most obvious methods to figure out in the entire series. Like, as soon as I saw that pen had an empty compartment, I pieced together exactly what happens. And the fact that the game saves this reveal for the very end, it's like, yeah, I'm way ahead of you on that one. This is kind of just a minor complaint though. I think the bigger problem at hand here is just how standard this case feels. The stakes don't feel nearly as high as the first Great Ace Attorney's first case. We have to defend Susato's friend, who we literally just met, who was never mentioned before this. On top of that, Sosuke is here, and yeah, I don't think I'm a Sosuke fan, unfortunately. It is pretty novel that we play as Susato in this case, who has to disguise herself as a man in order to serve in court. But really, that barely ends up playing a factor in the case. No one suspects her of being a woman. Hell, even the judge knew it was her the whole time, but didn't care. And on top of that, since she's been a judicial assistant the whole time, she knows the law in the courtroom pretty well, and it isn't as engaging as watching Ryunosuke slowly but surely become a more confident attorney over the course of the trial. I'm not saying these elements involving Susato are bad, I'm just saying they don't really change anything or stick out as much as they could. With that said, this case really picks up towards the end when we find out the culprit's motive for killing the defendant. And it's kind of based, actually. The victim in this case is so damn unlikable. So to have the culprit flat out express his intense frustrations at the lack of consequences they received, yeah, you can see where he's coming from, taking matters into his own hands like that. Learning about his motivations is what elevates this into a slightly above average case. And I mean, I kind of have to rank it higher than Great Ace Attorney 1's first case, because it knows when the hell it should end. Even Ouchie doesn't overstay his welcome here. I like his newfound confidence, and that scene at the end with him is hilarious. With all that said though, I overall found myself more hooked by the mystery, stakes, and characters of the Great Ace Attorney 1's opening case. If only that one knew when to shut up.
Awesome! We're not British!
Well, this was kind of a surprise. Tallying up my thoughts on each starter case in the series, I'm honestly shocked one of the better ones came from Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. That's pretty wild considering how a lot of people don't even count this one as a real Ace Attorney game. I completely agree with the general consensus that it is a Layton game first and foremost, with Ace Attorney sprinkled on top. But with that said, it does have trials, and one of those trials is a first one, even if the game starts out with a Layton segment. I don't know, this still counts to me, and I'm glad it does, because this honestly engaged me a lot more than most first cases in the series. Layton games are a lot more mystery-centric than Ace Attorney, which is saying something because Ace Attorney is a very mystery-centric series as well. But here, your client, Espella Cantabella, seems to be lobotomized. She shows absolutely no emotion or character whatsoever. And the crazy thing is, she also never does for the rest of the game. Anyway, her mentor insists that you accept the guilty verdict. A first for one of these first cases. It really puts you on alert, wondering what conspiracy could be behind Espella's odd state, and Darklaw's unnerving machinations. Another first for a first case is the fact that no one actually died. The victim was just allegedly assaulted by Espella, which makes for some cool new dynamics when you encounter her in the courtroom. Speaking of which, both Olivia Al Dente and Johnny Smiles are fantastic witnesses, with a ton of character. And I love how Johnny makes a decision that just throws the entire case on its head and everyone in it for a loop. That's pretty funny. I really wish these two could have been part of a longer case, honestly. I would have loved to see more of them. Thankfully, this case is well paced without overstaying its welcome. It's obviously very simple, like most first cases are. Nothing too crazy or extremely memorable here. This is the first time we get to see how bad the 3D model of Phoenix looks in this game, so that's something. The prosecutor is also the dollar store British version of Pain. I guess I should say the pound store version of Pain. So yeah, he might be the most forgettable prosecutor in the entire series. Even the judge here might be the most forgettable judge in the whole series. Britain is weird. But overall, this one doesn't really frustrate or bore me at any point, like the vast majority of first cases do in this series. Between Olivia frantically chopping at an eel, Johnny's love of chocolate bars being actually relevant, the British version of the blue badger playing a part, and Maya whacking Phoenix over the head with a metal pipe. Yeah, this is actually a pretty solid first case that gets me very interested in seeing what's to come in the rest of the game. Not bad for the only Ace Attorney game in existence that refuses to get released on modern platforms.
They were fake?
Of course they were fake!
Hey look everybody! The Clussy case! The more I think about Turnabout Storyteller, the less sure I am where the hell I should rank it. I mean, this is kind of a pathetic case, all things considered. And it's not the writing or the characters' faults. It's not even the fact that they wedged this side story case that has no relation to the main plot whatsoever, in between two important, dramatic, plot-heavy cases. So many people give this case shit for that, but I see that more as a problem with Spirit of Justice as a whole, rather than being something this particular case needs to answer for. No, the big thing holding this case back is that it feels unfinished. It feels like the developers took a look at this game, realized, oh shit, we forgot to give Athena anything to do, and then hurriedly threw this case in there despite not actually having the time to craft an investigation segment. You're just thrown right into the trial, handed almost all the evidence you'll need immediately, and then you go rapid fire through the introductions to all these kooky characters. It's just very awkward. Sometimes I forget who the defendant even is in this case. Partially because Bucky Wet is not exactly someone who leaves an impression, but also because we don't get any scenes talking to him in the precinct and forming a bond with him as a client. They really try and force it in there, like, oh, I'm his Miss Chickadee lawyer. Yeah, it kinda sucks. There also isn't much time to flesh out Gayru either. She really needed a ton more conversations in an investigation segment for you to get a better sense of her character. They try and make you feel sympathetic for her right at the end, and I absolutely did not. The pacing of this case just doesn't let you empathize with her. I'm telling you, most of this case's problems would have been solved if it wasn't half a damn case. Well, okay, that's not true. You'd still have Nayuta to deal with. Annoying as ever, with precious few charming moments. I did at least find it funny how he memorized an entire Rakugo story in preparation for the case. And sometimes he has a fun dynamic with Simon Blackwell, baby! Yeah, so every criticism I had of this case is actually invalid because it has Simon Blackwell. This is Athena's first and only completely solo case, without any help from Phoenix or Apollo. But with that said, they still felt the need to throw in Simon to babysit her. I would be frustrated about this, and I mean, on some level I still am, but it's Simon Blackwell. I love this guy. His dynamic with Athena is so cool and fun. POV, Simon Blackwell is grabbing and shaking you. This would have gone really hard on the 3DS. And it is actually pretty enjoyable seeing him and Nayuta spar from opposite sides of the bench. I wouldn't ship them, but I wouldn't give you the side eye if you ship them. Additionally, a huge chunk of this case is dedicated to Uendo, who honestly is a pretty good character. Other people have pointed this out, but it's nice that Ace Attorney actually has a depiction of dissociative identity disorder that isn't really negative. All the personalities work together very well, and none of them are a murderer, which is kind of a cliche for characters with this disorder. Yeah, it's a pretty good depiction from what I can tell. And apart from that, Uendo is just really charming and fun. Also, is it just me, or is Kisagawa kind of a baddie? Overall, I think Turnabout Storyteller is really enjoyable for what it is, but I can't shake the feeling that it isn't really complete. It feels like you should have investigated this location itself and pointed out all these clues on the site instead of just in these pictures. I love so much about it, and I do think it's a fun one-off case, but it's just a little too awkward and disjointed feeling to rank any higher. It did have the Clussy though. Man, you can see why I'm conflicted.
If you can't help me, I'm gonna f***ing shoot myself and make you two watch.
The Adventure of the Unspeakable Story is the one finale case that really does not feel like a finale case. It's pretty evident that the Great Ace Attorney duology is meant to be viewed as one giant continuous story. So while this is a solid midpoint break in this hypothetical big-ass 10-case game, I just don't know if it quite packs a large enough punch to stand up to most of the other finales. Don't get me wrong, it gets pretty damn great towards the end, but it kinda takes a while to reach that point. Hell, it takes a while for the murder to even happen. The pacing in this one is really weird, especially because you meet obvious culprit McGee very early on, and then he just disappears until the last stretch of the trial. It's like, yeah, I know who did it. Can we get a move on here? I like the Skulkin brothers perfectly fine, but it's possible we spend a little bit too much time with them in court. Ah well, at least they're effective comedically. I don't know what they were doing with the victim who constantly threatens to kill himself, with it always getting played for a joke. That's not funny. And in general, I think the investigation phase and the first day of the trial are fine enough, but not all that memorable. There are some solid stakes since Herlock got shot, and you also want to help Gina, who's a very sympathetic and endearing character I really love. I also can't just not be charmed by the one juror who's really into the stereoscope. You can tell the developers were really impressed with how hard the 3D effect is on the 3DS. This case also gives plenty of chances for Iris and Gregson to leave strong impressions for the first time in the game, especially old Greggy. Despite how standard a lot of the case feels, things really pick up like crazy towards the end. Thanks to the unscrupulous actions Gregson performs right in front of you on the witness stand. Watching him panic and squirm whenever you get close to uncovering his secrets, and realizing that odd things he does, like whispering to the culprit and suddenly attacking one of the Skulkins, are actually him striking a deal and planting the second disc, respectively. It's just kind of mind-blowing to witness these things in retrospect. This clear corruption happening right in plain sight. I think uncovering Gregson's crimes makes for an exciting and engaging midpoint of the story, considering who you have to take down by the end of the duology. This feels like a fitting warm-up for that. And while Ashley Graydon is kind of a whatever culprit for the most part, he does get to shine at the very end when he discusses his motives for committing McGilded's murder. In general, this case does a great job at following up on the unresolved questions from case 3, on top of really gutting you when Ryunosuke finally realizes he got a murderer off the hook. You know, off the hook until they died 10 minutes later. Overall, this is a case that starts out kinda slow, but gets really exciting towards the end, even concluding on an intriguing cliffhanger that sets up the second game very nicely. Far from my favorite final case in the series, but it's hard to hate any case where Herlock Sholmes escapes from the hospital to help you in court, only to pass out from doing so. Silly. Man, I don't know what to do with Twisted Karma and his last bow. It isn't just a case that sets up the final one in the game. It straight up is half of that case that just stops halfway through. I honestly think I would have preferred if they just made it one big old monstrous final case, considering how awkward it is that Twisted Karma on its own has zero resolution. And if you're worried about the case going on for too long, well, the easy solution is to cut down a lot of this Red-Headed League shit. It's a cute Sherlock Holmes reference and all, but it doesn't really add a whole lot to the story. I was not charmed by the French and Italian stereotype duo that just felt like a lame rehash of the Skulkin brothers. Actually, the French guy was okay. He felt enough like a real character. But holy shit, dude, the Italian had no personality outside of just being Italian and saying Italian things. I'm sorry, I did not find him endearing. He just felt pretty lazy and got on my nerves the whole time. The other goofy side characters are fine enough, and Daily Vigil has an alright backstory and mystery surrounding him. I like when the discount Skulkins hold him down to wipe his fake lip off. But really, the one day of trial sandwiched between investigations in this case honestly gets heavily overshadowed by the revelations in said investigations. You finally start unraveling so many mysteries that have been set up over the course of the duology. From elements that tie back to the previous case, to mysteries you've wondered about since the first game's tutorial case. It's thrilling to see it all come together. And this is all amidst an interesting and personal murder to solve. Who killed Gregson, the main detective of the duology? It's a crazy development that gets even crazier since your eternal rival, Barack Van Zeeks, is the one put on trial for ending his life. In the process of trying to prove him innocent, so many secrets about so many major characters are discovered. It's a real roller coaster of emotions and crazy twists. but like, nothing about it really stands on its own, you know? It's certainly a good first half of a case, with somewhat mediocre trials, but absolutely stellar investigations that had me hooked. But again, we gotta consider that pesky first half element at play here. This case is inherently at a disadvantage compared to nearly every other case in the series. Hell, at least in the Cosmic Turnabout, we prove our client innocent despite not solving the murder yet. There's no conclusion nor cliffhanger to this one. It just stops. Not even at the craziest reveal in the case, mind you. Also, I didn't want to get into this until we talk about the case after this, but I guess I'll just briefly say that Kazuma is a shockingly underwhelming prosecutor. When Ryunosuke says he's using the skills he learned as a defense attorney to be the perfect prosecutor, I was like, he is? Genuinely nothing about him came across as particularly formidable or intimidating as a prosecutor. It's like if in the first game, when Miles Edgeworth goes on trial, instead of his replacement being the ruthless Manfred von Karma, your new prosecutor is Apollo Justice. Like, ooh, I'm so scared. Overall, I think this case was a good start to the conclusion of Ryunosuke's story, but that's all it really is. A good start. Can't rank it any higher, sorry. Maybe if it just had really great characters in court. But instead you got Mr. Buca de Beppo over there, hamming it up. No thanks.
Is that Yuri?
I don't really have a lot to say about the Cosmic Turnabout. It very much is just the leading case to Turnabout for Tomorrow. But I still think it's quite good, and even a fair bit better than Twisted Karma and his last bow, since even though you don't catch the culprit here, you at least reach an actual stopping point where your client is found innocent. Not to mention that crazy cliffhanger, oh my god, what an ending. Before then, though, you have a really cool location to investigate with this space station, as well as a solid red herring with this delightfully eccentric, yet seemingly sinister, Yuri Cosmos. Why is he hitting the Gendo Ikari pose? Regardless, I definitely thought he did it for a while there, before I realized this case was only a part 1, and the killer wasn't ready to be revealed yet. I also think it's neat how this case takes place both before and after the first case of the game. And we actually get to see the bombing that leads to the Ted to Nate trial actually happen. We lay some good groundwork for characters like Aura and the mystery of who Metis is. Plus, it's very fun to see Phoenix and Simon butting heads in court and calling each other boy. You guys are like 5 years apart in age. What are you clowns talking about? I also remember finally getting won over by Bobby Fulbright in this case. On my first playthrough, I kinda thought they were trying too hard with his character being this goofy paragon of justice, but seeing his genuine concern for Simon was so sweet. It was awesome finding out Bobby's not such a bad guy after all. There's certainly some good stuff going on for this case, though it is very much incomplete since it's meant to lay the groundwork for the game's final case. Bit of a thankless role, but it fulfills that role very nicely. And even though Athena got inadvertently thrown under the bus at the end by Bobby, it was at least a necessary development for our client Solomon Starbuck to get proven innocent. So in other words, the ends justified the means.
I didn't kill this guy! I kinda did.
Oh, Mia, my hemorrhoids. Oh my god, my hemorrhoids are acting up, Mia. Make it stop. The crazy thing about Turnabout Memories is that it's easily one of the best starter cases in the series, in spite of Marvin Grossberg's urgent medical issues. This really feels like the first one they actually nailed. Not just giving you a forgettable one-off tutorial, but presenting you with an intriguing mystery that actually gets built upon later in the game. Of course, I'm not going to spoil any of that for you right now. I'm not even going to spoil the culprit here, just in case. This is one of the few starter cases where it isn't immediately revealed after all. So if you've never given these games a go and you're still inexplicably watching this video, I wouldn't want to be the one to spill the beans to you. Just know that their manipulations are immediately apparent and exposing their lies is extra satisfying as a result. This case also does a great job of hooking you right away, considering you're playing as Mia in a flashback case for a change. And your client is Phoenix, right? What? Having to defend the legendary lawyer back when he was just a little piss baby shitting and pooping his pants is a really fun twist. I like the scene where he just eats crucial evidence. He's such a boy failure, oh my god. This is such a fun side of Phoenix we never fully see in the present. He's also just so weak and pathetic in a way that Larry Butts and Maggie Bird aren't. With all of those elements combining to make him the most enticing starter client in the entire original trilogy. I genuinely cared about him and wanted to see Mia help him, regardless of the connection connection I know they would end up having later in the timeline. Additionally, this just feels like the most fully featured case of the original trilogy. Not just offering a solid mystery to find all the pieces of, but presenting you with really intriguing mystery bits for future cases to follow up on. What was the incident 8 months ago? Who the hell is Diego Armando? What did the culprit do to him? What is Mia's history with the culprit, and what happened in that first case that traumatized her so badly? Too many intriguing mystery bits to count, with this one being both satisfying on its own and as a piece of the larger picture in this game. Is it the best first case ever? Well, obviously not. I feel like while it's a more than solid basis for the rest of the game's overarching story, a lot of the details of the murder here aren't anything too crazy. And even though I'm not outright saying who the killer is, I mean, it's extremely easy to figure out. Not a huge deal or anything, but it almost didn't really need to be built up like how it was. Pretty simple in the grand scheme of every case in the series, but it definitely blows most starter cases out of the water. Oh, and Winston Payne is pretty good in this. I like how cocky he is since he's supposed to be in his prime, and his extra condescension towards Mia in particular is worth noting. OMG Winston Payne misogyny arc? So yeah, overall, pretty good case considering it has lines like, "My hemorrhoids are doing the Harlem Shake," and "We know whose milkshake brings all the boys to the yard." Guys, you have to believe me, this is one of the best written video games I've ever played in my life. Just ignore those. Or alternatively, maybe those lines are the reason why. You don't know. Turnabout Airlines is pretty good. And by the standards of Investigations 1, pretty good might as well be a fucking masterpiece. Sorry, I don't really like this game that much, but I genuinely don't have that much bad to say about this case. The setting is really novel, not only taking place on a plane, which you can't really do in a traditional Ace Attorney game, but taking place on a cool luxury plane, complete with an elevator and gift shop. Do these sort of planes actually exist in real life? Because I've never heard of anything like this before. Really cool shit. I also like Rhoda a lot. She's a pretty normal character by the standards of the series, but she's sweet. I love her little subplot about no one wanting to buy the ugly suitcases she designed, so she just pays $1,200 to buy one on each flight she takes. Literally, where does she get all that money? Oh well, the most important thing is that I actually care about defending her. They do a good job of making you believe that Edgeworth would want to defend her too, and they do a pretty solid job of obfuscating who the true culprit is. I mean, I can't be the only one who thought it was Zinc LeBlanc, considering what reason would a random passenger have to aggressively pin the blame on Edgeworth unless he was covering his own tracks. Nope, turns out he just did it because he's an asshole. My next guess would have been the captain, but he ends up not even mattering to this case. The true culprit is the ever so sleepy baddie, Cammy Meal. And considering how she becomes your investigating partner while you're in the gift shop, I gotta admit, I kinda mentally ruled her out the first time I played this. As far as I can remember, this might be the only time you ever investigate a crime scene with the culprit. It's neat, and she makes for a decently fun final opponent. Overall, this is a pretty solid mystery with a cool setting and fun one-off characters. Well, okay, I'm not the biggest fan of Zinc LeBlanc, but he's fine as an annoying little red herring for this one case. I feel like he so easily had windy old bag Mike Meekin's potential of becoming a recurring face throughout the series, which would make me thoroughly despise him beyond all belief like I do for those two. But they never brought him back, so he's fine. It is kind of a short and simple case, and the middle bit where you've already proved your innocence to everyone else, and yet you have to prove your innocence again to Franziska, is kind of annoying padding. But it could have been a lot worse. I should know, I played the other cases in this game. Overall though, this is a really good time that mostly comes out unaffected by a lot of this game's overall problems. Though this case also has a cameo from Sal Manella, and he makes a bunch of cringy, outdated gamer references, so maybe this is the worst case in the series actually. Oh, who am I kidding? I love shit like that.
A foolish samurai warrior.
I personally think there's a huge difference between a case that doesn't impact the overall plot and a filler case. Turnabout Samurai has very little actual relevance to the plot of the first Ace Attorney game, but you're out of your mind if you think this is a filler case. This is the moment in the series that really gets to define Maya as a character, not just as a sad, helpless defendant. This is the case that establishes the Maya we all know and love. The goofy, mischievous, steel samurai loving scamp who adds so much joy and levity to the murder mysteries in this series. I mean, you have your first ladder versus stepladder debate here. Now that's what I'm talking about. Peak fiction for sure. Nah, as an overall case though, Turnabout Samurai is pretty pretty good. I think it absolutely suffers from being 3 days long for no real reason, especially when the investigation on the second day mostly consists of running errands for people and finding trading cards. God, I never realized how valuable the Magatama really is in terms of providing interesting gameplay. With that said, the story is pretty neat and the setting is super cool. This case establishes the entire Steel Samurai franchise, and it's fun investigating the studio where it all gets filmed. There's a few pretty fun characters like Penny Nichols and Cody Hackins. There's also other characters like Salmonella and Windy Oldbag. I guess I'll say that Sal is not as bad as he could have been. And as for Oldbag, I probably would not thoroughly loathe her if this was the only time she ever appeared. Why does Ace Attorney love picking the worst characters to make into recurring faces? But yeah, she's kind of fine here. I think the culprit, Dee Vasquez, is a little forgettable. She especially just has the worst breakdown. But I do want to give a special shout out to that one moment where she calls her boys to kill you. I completely forgot about this. There's nothing else like it in the series. Just 4 random unique sprites appear on screen for like 30 seconds, and then they're never brought up again. Shout out to the boys. Truly some of the best Ace Attorney characters out there. Oh, but for real, shout out to Gumshoe. It's really funny how you and Mia decide Cody shouldn't take the stands, but then Gumshoe just comes in like, aha, I was listening the whole time. He's taking the stands. But then he does the same thing later in a more positive manner, saving you from the boys and catching Dee Vasquez in the act. He's a real driving force to the trajectory of this case in a way he rarely is elsewhere, and I think that's pretty neat. Overall, yeah, the setting is cool, the mystery is solid, the reveal that Jackhammer was actually attempting to murder Vasquez was pretty cool. The case is definitely too long and the investigations can be a real drag, but it's undeniably very fun and I was invested in the story the whole time. I don't think it ever veered too far off focus, and I feel like this is where the first game finally started to find its groove after 2 somewhat underwhelming cases before it. I mean, this is the case that had unnecessary feelings. Do I really need to elaborate more? I don't even know where to start with the final witch trial. First of all, I know we're adopting a spoilers welcome approach to all these cases, but this is the one exception I'm gonna make. I'm not even gonna risk being the one to spoil the single most insane case in the series for you, especially since this game is the only one in the series locked on the 3DS, and copies of it are incredibly hard to come by. Just know that this case is somewhat controversial in a lot of people's rankings, because it includes a highly ludicrous plot development. By Ace Attorney standards, that is. The thing is, I've been playing through some of the Layton games with my friends, and the more you do that, the more you realize, yeah, no, this is just how Layton stories are. It's fine if you don't vibe with that, and I didn't really know if I did for the longest time, but I think it's a bit odd to dismiss the entire case because of one plot development you don't like. The insane layers to the game's justification for this are just so deliciously Layton-y in a way that I'm only now starting to appreciate. The storyteller's actions are insane, but in a way somewhat reminiscent of Godot and how irrational and emotionally stunted he could be. Darklaw gets a lot of interesting characterization here, to the point where I kinda wonder why she wasn't just the main Inquisitor throughout the entire game. Barnum literally does not show up in this case at all. That's kinda crazy. He didn't matter one bit to the overarching storyline. I'm crying. The case also serves as a compelling turning point for Espella, a character who isn't my favorite, but whose storyline here and gradually revealed history with Darklaw and the storyteller are incredibly compelling. You even do a couple of puzzles in the middle of the court case. Finally! Why did it take this long for that to happen in one of this game's cases? The overall mystery is very compelling, but there are some issues with the execution. The first half is maybe a little too drawn out and uneventful, and having to cross-examine 10 different guards on the witness stand goes a bit too far into gimmicky territory. It's not more difficult than a typical cross-examination, it's just more tedious. Sure, the guy who constantly wants to get stepped on by the sexy lady guard is very out of pocket and hilarious, but not enough to make me really care that much about this portion of the case. It's also just way too easy to find the contradictions, considering how you barely have even one page of evidence to sort through. I know they didn't want to make the trials nor the puzzles too hard in this game, out of fear of alienating fans of only one series but not the other, but I don't know. I feel like you could ramp up the difficulty a little bit more for the very end of the game. Oh, and Luke just isn't in the trial at all. What's that about? But Layton taking up arms against you as the Inquisitor and finally fulfilling the promise of the title, Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, is a pretty special moment. And again, the sheer insanity factor at work here makes this an incredibly memorable trial. Maybe it's a little weird how we keep going for quite a bit after the big reveal. Like, you'd think the judge and all the people watching have bigger fish to fry than digging into the minutia of Espella's memories. But it's hard to complain too much about this odd bit of pacing when the truth is so satisfying and fascinating to uncover. Not an all-timer finale case on the level of some of the others, but still a very good one. Please give this game a go, whether you can get your hands on a real physical copy or you have to sail the 7 seas in order to play it. Doesn't matter. It's like the good professor always says, the ends justify the Wait, this isn't a Dual Destinies case. Why am I making a reference to that?
God, I hate Shakespeare.
Not to give away my thoughts on the 4th case of the first Great Ace Attorney or anything, but oh my god, is the Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro, the direct follow-up to that case, so much better in practically every way. It's a legitimately fun and intriguing mystery with characters I actually want to be around. Well, okay, Soseki is the defendant again, and as I alluded to in my ranking of every first case, I don't really like Soseki that much. He's just a lot, you know? Like, Herlock Sholmes is the perfect level of silliness. Not only because said silliness feels a little more restrained, but because he's also a cool and smart character on top of that. Soseki just kind of screams a lot and does these weird poses, and he's not really all that charming. Look, all I'm saying is, if I was a real-life historical figure, this is not how I would want to be depicted in a couple generations' time. If I'm being totally honest, having a repeat culprit that I already don't really care about that much harms the placement in this case just a tiny bit. Not by much though, because it's genuinely really good. They do something super unique and fun by upending the standard conventions of the series and actually having the culprit survive. That scene where he just stood up out of his seat made me mentally shit myself with fear. It's so cool to have someone be the victim of attempted murder for a change, and actually getting him on the stand to testify about his experience intimately wrestling with Soseki in order to determine whether Romeo or Juliet would win in a fight. Oh yeah, that reminds me. This man's name is William Shamspeare, and he talks in a bunch of Shakespeare quotes constantly. But he's also not like an in-universe replacement for Shakespeare. No. The real Shakespeare still exists. This Shamspeare guy just quotes him all the time and does all these goofy dances, and oh my god, he's a delight. I feel like he's the glue that really holds this case together. If he was just some random boring asshole, this whole story really wouldn't work as well. With that said, uncovering his pretty clever method of defrauding a gas company on the first day of court is legitimately cool and fun. I love how neatly it ties up the mystery of why there's so much soap in his apartment and why it looked like he was eating soap. And while I correctly assumed Shamspeare was the real culprit attempting to kill Soseki, I never would have guessed there was another attempted murder on top of that attempted murder, committed by Olive Green of all characters. Someone I really didn't care about much at all in her previous case, who ended up being the absolute best character in this one. Out of nowhere, I might add. The scene where you prevent her suicide is so damn unexpected and moving, and hearing why she did what she did is equally so. I love the fact that she didn't outright murder Shamspeare in cold blood, and instead laid a trap for him that would only kill him if he really was the one who killed her fiancé. She's easily one of the most sympathetic culprits to date in the entire series, while also having one of the rawest lines in "It's not to be. That is the answer. You deserve to die for what you've done." Like, holy shit, dude! Overall, this is a very good case with an extremely satisfying ending. Though there are a couple things that prevent me from calling it great. Despite how unique it is, it's still a rather simplistic plot, with Shamspeare having a rather underwhelming and unnecessary motive to kill. How hard would it be to just look for the treasure when the occupant of the room isn't in there, dude? I wouldn't mind that so much if they just played up what a complete whack job he is, which I guess they kinda do with his whole general demeanor, but I don't know. I was waiting for that whole killer dropping the facade moment we've become so accustomed to with Ace Attorney villains. But it just never really comes with him, shockingly. We get a few moments where he breaks character and stops talking in Shakespeare language, but then he just goes right back to it, right up until the end. I don't know, I kinda wanted more out of him. I also think the gas stealing plotline does go on a bit too long and take up a bit too much time, and considering how heavily this case ties back to the first game's fourth case, it essentially makes this case feel like a lost episode from the first game, and kinda makes you wonder, okay, why are we doing this now? What is this second game even about? Ultimately, however, these are pretty minor issues. This case is very good and fun, and I like it. Shall I compare it to a summer's day or something? I can't think of any other Shakespeare quotes right now, sorry.
Donald Trump, I should have known it was you.
I really do get the appeal with Turnabout Trump. One of the most shocking and explosive first cases in all of Ace Attorney. But at the same time, I feel like maybe the hype with this one is a little bit overblown. Like, at the end of the day, it's still a first case, you guys. It can only do so much while trapped in the constraints of being a first case. And yet, I've seen this one ranked unreasonably high on a lot of people's rankings of every case in the series. I saw one video in particular that ranked it as the number 2 best case out of every case ever. Huh? Like, that's a harmless opinion and whatever, you're completely free to have it, but also, huh? To me, this is a really good and intriguing hook to start a game with. But there's one thing about it that always struck me as bizarre. Let's start with the good first. First of all, this case is great at just throwing you into the deep end of this bizarro reality, where your client accused of murder is Phoenix Wright, who is inexplicably a piano player and hasn't practiced law for 7 years since getting disbarred, and also he has a daughter? What is happening? I didn't fully appreciate just how crazy getting all this info at once is on my first sitting. A lot of people take issue with how Phoenix hijacks the plot of Apollo Justice from Apollo Justice himself. And while he does really steal the show here, I honestly kind of like it. The way a complete novice like Apollo finds himself inexplicably caught in a 7-year-long feud between 2 legal masterminds, it's pretty crazy, and you're constantly on edge once you realize this isn't going the same way every other first case goes. Once again, I'm not going to spoil the culprit just in case, even though it is really hard to talk about this case without talking about the culprit. But I will say that this case is so good at playing with your expectations. Even Turnabout Memories, where they don't reveal the culprit right away. I mean, it's pretty obvious to figure out who it is just based on the conventions of Ace Attorney first cases. There are only so many characters, and it seems like it's gonna go the same way as every other one, which is what makes that blind side so damn satisfying and cool. I also want to mention, for the record, and this is really, really dumb, but initially when I first played the case, I didn't really care about the nitty-gritty details of it solely because I have never played poker and don't know poker rules, so it was very hard for me to get invested in a poker game. And yet, now that I've played over 100 hours of Balatro, suddenly I am so poker and card-pilled that I was actually engaged by the poker discussion here. So yeah, the case actually got better for me because of Balatro. I don't know if that's something I should really be taking into consideration, but there you go. Anyway though, I think the one thing that kind of holds this case back a little bit for me is, ironically enough, the culprit. A good twist, an amazing character. But I hesitate to call it an amazing twist because we don't really know that much about them at this point. It makes it a little bit uncomfortable when you figure out who it is, but also for a first-time player, we haven't really formed a connection with this character at all since we just met them. I kind of wonder what it would be like if this was the second case. If we just got one normal one to start out and get to know this person, then maybe it would have been an even wilder reveal. But at the same time, starting with a case with this many moving parts is pretty wild, and that's the appeal for a lot of people. Even so, part of me can't help but feel like this is the game's climax. Like, this is the culmination of everything the past 7 years have built up to, and now it's just mostly over right at the start. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people do tend to say this is where the game peaks. But as someone who actually likes Turnabout Succession a lot, I disagree. Ah well, that's a conversation for another video. Point is, this is a great opening case. Easily one of the best. But at the same time, I think it's a little absurd how much people praise it when it's still pretty simple gameplay-wise, and its big twist isn't nearly as earth-shattering as some others that benefit from a hell of a lot more build-up. I do really like it though. Thanks, Balatro!
As you can see, we don't use water, we actually use orca tears.
After finishing the third case ranking, I took a 6-month hiatus from replaying the series while I buckled down and watched all those god-awful Adam Sandler movies for that one ranking. Once that was over and it finally came time to return to Ace Attorney, I figured there was no better case to get back into the swing of things with than Turnabout Reclaimed. A case that chronicles Phoenix Wright's grand return to the law after 7 years being a piano-playing hobo. And he sure is the same as he ever was in the original trilogy. Yeah, the state of his character doesn't really matter that much. What matters is that this is an incredibly fun and charming case. Nothing mind-blowing, but something I would have happily spent money on the 3DS eShop back in the day. I've seen a lot of people describe this as Turnabout Big Top if it was good. And like, no, legit, I think that's a very apt description. It's kind of the anti-Turnabout Big Top, in fact, because you guys suspect this 40-year-old veterinarian of being in a relationship with a much younger woman. And it turns out, you were just completely off base. He's not a pedophile. There are no pedophiles in this case. It's a miracle. And the people here at this aquarium actually genuinely love and care about each other, which in turn makes you care about helping them and saving this orca? Crazy how that works. Yeah, the story about an orca being put on trial is silly, but legitimately engrossing, and all the characters here are pretty enjoyable. Well, okay, Norma de Plume is kinda whatever, but Sasha's a fun defendant who's great outside of the constant fish puns she makes. Herman Crab and Marlon Rhymes are both cool, more on them in a bit. And even Pearly is back. She's not exactly important to this case, but look, there she is. She gets more screen time here than Trucy does. Oh, poor Trucy. At least she mentions her friend Emma gave her this luminol fluid that you use at one point. I'm amazed we were allowed to use luminol fluid without Emma being physically present. That's a first. The antics Orla the Orca and these cute little penguins get up to are also fun. And in general, this is just a very unique and endearing location, with kooky characters you grow to love. Uncovering the mystery itself is solid enough on the first day, but I think what really makes this case stick out is the fact that it has, bar none, the best red herring in the entire series. Absolutely everything points to the surly and mysterious Herman Crab being the killer. Not just his demeanor, but the very conventions of Ace Attorney itself. Generally, you don't get the killer on the stand as a witness on the first day of trial. So when the lovable goofball Marlon Rhymes took the stand on the first day, I instantly ruled him out and forgot about him. Especially when this mysterious, evil-looking veterinarian dude only showed up on day 2 of the investigation. That's how these Ace Attorney cases work. If there's someone you don't meet until day 2, there's probably a sinister reason for that. But the fact that Crab was just an innocent good guy, and it was Marlon the whole time, really took me off guard. As did the part where he chugs an entire barrel, suddenly becomes buff, and gives a testimony entitled The Dissin of Phoenix Wright. You know, the whole cross-examining an orca thing honestly feels pretty normal in comparison to this. It makes for a wonderfully wacky time. And I love that final reveal that Marlon didn't actually intend to kill the victim. It's actually pretty sweet that he's given a second chance and allowed to return to the aquarium months later. He's one of the more sympathetic victims, unlike some people I know. Although, maybe the reveal that Marlon was Azura's boyfriend wouldn't have been as shocking if Phoenix had just examined the charm earlier and noticed the photo of the two of them in there. That would have saved him a lot of time he wasted suspecting Herman Crab. I think Ryunosuke might be a better lawyer, because he definitely would have examined that evidence immediately. Okay, maybe I should give Phoenix a break, because it has been 7 years since he practiced law. He's a little rusty. Overall, this is a good, strong case. Not the most complex or emotionally compelling, but it's a nice feel-good one that acts as a great little bonus for Dual Destinies. Just play it before Turnabout for Tomorrow. You won't be able to look at a certain character the same way, and it'll be kinda awkward. Oh yeah, one last thing. I really like the part where Herman Crab says it doesn't matter if his torpedo system is illegal, if it leads to the lives of the animals being saved. See, what he's basically saying is that the ends justify the means.
What is this, a gun? Oh shit!
Turnabout Reminiscence is commonly referred to as the only good case in Investigations 1. And to that I say, hey, Airlines is pretty good too. But yeah, Reminiscence is definitely the best one in this game. All things considered though, it is a pretty simple case, with the murder method, the locations, and the contradictions you have to point out being rather on the basic side. I suppose this is the biggest flaw with the case. It's not really crazy or intricate enough to rank any higher. But it is pretty cozy and sweet, as far as double homicides go. It's really fun flashing back to what would have been Edgeworth's first trial and seeing him meet Gumshoe, Kay, and even the judge. I also really love how you find the contradiction with the judge's testimony from a mile away before you even begin cross-examining him. That's a great way to use the gameplay of the series to reflect how kinda dumb he is. I love you, Judgy. Don't take any offense to that. It's also really fun working with 13-year-old Franziska. She's exactly as bratty and overconfident as I imagined the teenage version of her being. And I really enjoy the sibling rivalry happening between these two as they try and solve the case before the other one. I think maybe Miles is a little bit not extremely dickish given when this case takes place in the timeline, but I suppose he just hasn't honed his ruthless prosecutor persona yet. It is nice how he doesn't really express an interest in proving Gumshoe innocence, only caring about getting to the true facts of the case. It still feels in line with the timeline of his character progression enough. Tyrell Bad is a sick as hell addition with the most rocking theme music any character in the series gets, possibly. And oh my god, I love Little Kay. Seeing this adorable child run around, bond with Gumshoe, and kick Edgeworth in the shins is really fun. And it's also really fun how a lot of the case revolves around this law-themed vending machine and determining how Gumshoe got an extra $1 to pay for his Swiss roll pack. The location of the courthouse may be a little basic and standard, but the details of the case and the character bits are certainly fun. Still, what really makes this case a home run is Callisto U. Her unhinged laughter is a really fun gimmick, and that final confrontation with her is already pretty solid, but then she pulls out the damn gun. That shit was nuts. Like, why did it take them so long to add a culprit who, when cornered, just said, "Okay, but what if I just shoot you?" It's a crazy climactic end that signifies that Miles and Franziska may just be in over their heads dealing with their first criminal. It's a fun case with solid prequel elements and a wonderful, exciting conclusion. It even develops the mystery of the Yatagarasu and the smuggling ring in a way that makes you think Turnabout Ablaze will bring those plot lines to an interesting conclusion. It doesn't, but you know, it's fun to dream.
Kill a fucking Englishman and throw him in the sea.
After making a bad first impression on me and an even worse second impression, the Great Ace Attorney finally started to win me over with its third case, which honestly is the best one in the entirety of the first game. It kinda peaks here with the shortest case. Yeah, speaking of which, this case is indeed a tad shorter than the first case, which really doesn't bode well for said first case in terms of how overly long and drawn out it is. Sorry, I don't think I made it clear enough. I don't really like the first Great Ace Attorney that much. Oh well. This is that one case from it that I think is a complete success. The Adventure of the Runaway Room isn't the most exceptional case ever or anything, but it's a legitimately surprising experience that also serves as a great development in Ryunosuke's overall story. He and Susato make it to London, and they immediately get thrust into their first ever case in an official capacity. All they gotta do is defend the wealthy philanthropist Magnus McGilded, who's just such a nice and generous guy. Look at him giving his money away willy-nilly. Aw, he's like the Mr. Beast of his day. Wait, that's not a good thing. Yeah, let's not beat around the bush here. Magnus McGilded actually did it. This is the second time you defend a client who's actually guilty, but it doesn't feel like a rehash because it's set up and paid off way differently. The added context of this being your first experience in a British courtroom, witnessing firsthand how easily corruptible the law is here, is a very potent wake-up call for what a difficult time Ryunosuke is going to have finding the truth going forward. Having him immediately get railroaded into the defense of a guilty client is a great way to show off how green and incapable he still is. And the entire time you're defending this guy who's all smiles on the bench all the time, there's always a slight inkling that maybe he could have done it. You really go back and forth on that a lot. Or at least I did when I played the case for the first time. Until eventually, you're hit with pretty decisive evidence that nope, it was those two assholes on top of the omnibus who did it. Until doubt starts to creep in, courtesy of the prosecutor, Barack Van Zeeks. Oh yeah, this is his introduction, and it's a pretty good one. This guy is intimidating as all hell, but also, I just really want to point out to you guys, according to that one Ace Attorney TV video when Phoenix says his name, it's apparently pronounced Barack, like Barack Obama.
Barack.
What? Is that really how you say it? I'm just gonna call him Barack from now on. F it. Phoenix Wright said so. Yeah, so Barack tells you that the bloodstain that proves McGillicuddy's innocence wasn't there when he inspected it. Of course, he has no evidence of that, and you just have to take his word for it, but it does kind of line up with your inspection of the bust from earlier. This leads into an absolutely chilling scene where the mostly calm and friendly McGillicuddy breaks down. You know, like a culprit would, but he's the defendant about to be found innocent. Except, is he though? It's a truly wild last act of this case. Honestly, the adventure of the runaway room is good for a lot of the same reasons Turnabout Trump is. It just does not go the way you're expecting it to go based on Ace Attorney conventions. With that said, I feel a little similarly towards it as I do for Turnabout Trump. It is a very simple, trial-only sort of case that doesn't have a lot of the benefits that come from longer and more fleshed out cases. Honestly, this feels more like a starter case than the actual starter case in this game, which I guess makes sense since this is your first time in Britain. Even so, there are a lot of cool elements that make this case pretty good outside of the great final reveal, like getting to meet the cool side character Gina for the first time, and getting a mini investigation via the omnibus where the crime took place, which is actually brought into the courtroom. It's pretty unique compared to other cases. Parts of it could feel a bit standard, like I don't remember a thing about these other witnesses, other than the omnibus driver being named Beppo, which is funny. Shout out to Beppo. But aside from some standard elements, it's never bad or dull, and it all just builds and builds to an amazing conclusion, with an equally amazing and chilling last cutscene that perfectly establishes why Barack Obama over here is called the Reaper. Overall, I really like the adventure of the runaway room. Both it and Magnus McGillicuddy's great character in general are the only things that really stuck out in my mind about this first game for the past 4 years. Sorry guys, I promise, I like the second one a lot better. Oh, and you guys thought Turnabout Serenade was my biggest guilty pleasure on this list. I mean, it still kind of is, but a definite second place that I derive way more pleasure from, perhaps ironically, is Turnabout Academy. Honestly, I loved this case the first time I played it, and was pretty shocked to see that it's a very divisive one. Then I thought about it more, and yeah, no, that makes sense. The problems with this case especially presented themselves upon replay. But hear me out, this case is genuinely kind of good. The Law Academy setting is very unique, and the characters are absolutely wonderful. The stealthy cardboard box wearing Miriam Scuttlebutt is super fun, and I especially can't get enough of that main trio. Juniper is a bit plain and generically nice, but I don't dislike her or anything. And the slack is far picked up by Robin Newman and Hugh O'Connor. You know, funny story with Robin. The first time I played this case and saw this masculine dude get really excited to wear feminine clothes and lament the fact that he couldn't be as pretty as Juniper, I was genuinely impressed. Like, wow, the Ace Attorney writers are tackling gender dysphoria in big 2013 when this game came out? That's honestly really cool. And then I thought about it and realized, wait, that doesn't add up. I don't think these devs would be that progressive at that point in time. And that's when it hit me, oh, Robin is literally just a cis girl pretending to be a boy. A little disappointing, but still a fun twist. And it's still really nice how you help Robin become her authentic self. I like how the big equivalent secret for Hugh is that he's a 25-year-old man who pretended to be an 18-year-old genius. That's just kind of silly. Overall, I love this trio. Their friendship is genuinely really heartwarming, and the way they all support Athena at her lowest point in the trial is great. Oh yeah, Athena! Guys, you'll never believe this. You actually get to play as her in this case. Phoenix doesn't swoop in halfway through and steal it from you. It's all Athena with Apollo as her assistant. And I love Athena, so this is a boon. Plus, it's Clavier, guys! He's back! Doesn't really have a huge role in this case. I kind of wish they used him more, but he's here. Also, Trucy has a whopping 4 lines. I counted. There's a ton of other details I like here. Like, it's fun how the body was disguised as a statue of Phoenix Wright doing the objection pose, and Athena has to try and mimic that pose, while also saying maybe the most out-of-pocket line in the entire series to Apollo. But yeah, I just like how the iconography of the series, these things that have always been there, like the objection pose and Phoenix's hairdo, actually play a role within the narrative of this case. I like how the whole Hugh O'Connor, you a goner thing was just a red herring. It felt like a natural conclusion to come to and didn't come across as a waste of time after the fact. I like when Simon just goes out for a stroll because he gets bored. I like when Bobby Fulbright sticks his head out the window. Genuinely, this case is just so fun. It's like they were trying their hardest to make up for how few interesting things there are in the Monstrous Turnabout, and just threw double the amount of fun moments in this one. This case sounds really great. Why'd I say it was a guilty pleasure? I don't know, man. I guess I must have spread misinformation there. But you know, the ends justify the means, particularly in this dark age of the law that we all live in. Did that make any sense to you at home? If you answered no, then congratulations. You've discovered the biggest problem with Turnabout Academy. You see this guy? His name is Aristotle Means. And boy oh boy, he sure does love to keep saying how much the ends justify the means over and over in this case. And his students repeat it too. You see, this is bad because he's teaching them that securing victory is more important than finding the truth. And you should pursue any means to justify those ends. For the ends do justify the means. Especially for him, Aristotle Means. I'm gonna be honest, this guy is so unsubtle and so poorly written that he kind of wraps around into being the funniest Ace Attorney character. My friends and I have the most ironic obsession with Aristotle Means. Like, he's our equivalent of what Quercus Alba is for a lot of other fans. I mean, come on. This is all he talks about. And his students will constantly talk about the ends justifying the means too, even when it doesn't make sense. Surely they should be doing more immoral shit, but instead they do the tamest possible things and then repeat the ends justify the means catchphrase again and again. It's one of the worst cases at telling and not showing in the entire series. Oh, and that's not the only thing wrong with Means. I'm gonna make a bold claim and say that he is the most obvious killer in the entire series, besides the ones who were told to you right at the start. I mean, come on. This guy is literally talking about how we should do immoral shit and ignore the truth in order to get the verdict we want. That is his entire character. And also, look at him! The minute he flashed that horrible grin at me at the very beginning of the case, I knew it was him. There literally was never any doubt in my mind throughout the entirety of the rest of the case. I would have genuinely been shocked if the culprit was literally anyone else. And the fact that Athena and Apollo never suspect him at any point, despite the fact that he has a clear conflicting ideology to the victim, is ridiculous. Wake up! It is Means. It's always been Means and you know it. As much as I love this case, I really can't deny how poorly written all this ends justify the means and dark age of the law business is. Again, show the students going to really unscrupulous lengths to get what they want. It's like they were afraid to make the main trio unlikable. So then, I don't know, have Miriam Scuttlebutt be the more nefarious student who takes Means' teachings to heart. It just feels like everyone in this case is a big goofball while the most obvious motherfucker is standing there the entire time, grinning at you and talking about his evil ideology. And it's like, why are we wasting our time on Hugh O'Connor? It's not him! Come on now! Fortunately, Means goes from being a so bad he's good character to an actually pretty fun villain once he turns into this Spartan teacher. I love the random shit he writes on the chalkboard and the animation of him throwing chalk at you, which would have gone hard on the 3DS. Overall, this case is pretty notably flawed and I can't call it top tier or anything, but it's a sentimental favorite of mine. I had a blast with it the first time I played it, and I continue to have a blast with it to this day. It's like the Spider-Man 3 or Revenge of the Sith of Ace Attorney cases. There are some ridiculous, baffling writing decisions you can't help but laugh at, but once you accept that, you come to realize that there's also a lot of legitimately great stuff to it. This case is never boring. It's always either hilariously incompetent or genuinely compelling. They could never make me hate you, Turnabout Academy. I guess, ultimately, what they say is true. The ends really do justify the means.
I opened the passenger door and wiggled my way out of there.
Did you just dab?
Reunion and Turnabout is a very good case. Not one of the all-time best, but a real breath of fresh air compared to what it's sandwiched between in Justice for All. What a weird game that was. Maya finds herself in the defendant's chair for the second case in a row. This time accused of channeling a spirit that ended up murdering a doctor. I actually really like the moral ambiguity here. Like, for a while, I thought the spirit she channeled really did do it, and we had to prove that Maya herself shouldn't be held liable for the actions of someone she channels. It feels like a pretty insurmountable challenge to prove her innocence, especially with the photographic evidence we received courtesy of Lada. I feel like she's a pretty divisive character, and while I can understand why she has haters, all I can say is, that couldn't be me. I've genuinely loved Lada from day one, ever since I first met her in the first game. She's just so damn funny. And while she can be a bit of a hindrance sometimes, I feel like she does have a heart of gold, as evidenced in this case when she goes through an arc and feels legit remorse over helping the prosecution take down Maya. Speaking of the prosecution, this is our intro to Franziska von Karma, a pretty good prosecutor who isn't one of my personal favorites, but that's mainly just because of her intense competition. Nah, she's good, and this is a solid first case in terms of introducing her as your new rival, since Edgeworth is apparently dead. Phoenix's extreme gay angst over this fact is pretty funny, not gonna lie. Back to the new characters, however. I feel like this case does a stellar job of introducing Pearl Fay. She's easily one of my favorite characters in all of Ace Attorney. Simply adorable in how sheltered and precocious she is. I really like how a major factor in the outcome of this case is the fact that she was playing with a ball and she accidentally broke a sacred urn that housed the spirit of the founder of the Quirine channeling technique. Very fitting thing for a little kid to do. The actual mystery is pretty strong as well, revealing that Pearl's mother Morgan was trying to dispose of Maya so Pearl could take over the village, and teaming up with a disgraced nurse, Eenie Meenie, who could conveniently get revenge on the doctor she worked for at the same time. I think it's pretty cool how this case essentially has two culprits, especially since Morgan and Eenie are kinda the only two people who could have done it. So even if you suss one of them out, it's highly unlikely that you'll figure out right away that they were in cahoots. The main problem with this though, is that despite the excellent confrontation against Eenie in the final day of court, we never actually get to take down Morgan. She's just arrested off screen, which is kinda lame. For such an evil, venomous character, she's shoved to the background in both of the cases she plays a role in, which is especially egregious here because there's a lot less going on than there is in the other case she's in. Even so, the Eenie stuff is pretty exciting and her story is genuinely pretty sad and horrific. Apart from that, it's pretty cool how this is the first case to really revolve around spirit channeling as a potential means for murder. We get much more interesting cases of it in Trials and Tribulations and Spirit of Justice, but this is a pretty good way to lay the groundwork for those cases. It's very good. Definitely not outstanding. I mean, the murder plot does end up being pretty simple when you get down to it. And I definitely think there's a bit of an over-reliance on Mia here that I would have hoped they would have gotten out of their system during the first game. Mia's a great character, but it kind of annoys me how much she needs to be channeled in order to bail Phoenix out of various situations. But overall, a pretty good case, with important implications for later on. It's honestly wild how they tease a direct follow-up to this case at the end, but then they just don't have that follow-up until the final case of the next game. I can't be the only one who played Justice for All for the first time and assumed Morgan would come back in the final case, right? I don't know, like I said, Justice for All is weird, but that's not this case's fault. It's some solid stuff. Shout out to Dick Gumshoe trying to keep Pearl amused by showing her his gun. That's always funny.
He has control of the Senate and the courts.
The resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo is a case with some pretty high highs, yet some kind of baffling lows. I think it does an amazing job of tying together every plot thread and loose end found in nearly every other case in the duology. Watching this well thought out and tightly knit story all come together in the second half of this final climactic case is really satisfying. The problem kinda comes in with the fact that this is just the second half, picking up where Twisted Karma and his last bow left off. As a result, the case on its own doesn't really have a lot of variety in the gameplay departments. The jury system has been completely done away with, and it's almost entirely nothing but trial, with just a tiny investigation segment added into the middle. This is fine when you consider this and Twisted Karma to be one big case, since you already did a ton of investigating. As one big case, I might be tempted to rank this higher. It's kinda like the Sonic 3 and Knuckles of Ace Attorney cases. But on its own, I just don't think it has the best gameplay loop. Don't get me wrong, that one investigation and dance of deduction segment is immaculate. I could watch Mikotoba tap dance all day. It's so wonderful to see him and Sholmes working together firsthand to help crack this whole case. I also think Judge Jigoku has a fair amount of sauce as a villain. It was a pretty nutty twist, and it's really cool to see a judge on the stand as a culprit. I also just really enjoyed his venomous contempt for Ryunosuke. He honestly impressed me way more than, well, the actual big bad behind everything. Yeah, problem number one on the story and character fronts. I don't think male Strongheart is a very good villain. It really just feels like Damon Gant again, but with none of the charm, personality, or sauce. I don't mind that he's an incredibly obvious culprit from day one. I mean, even Ryunosuke doesn't express any surprise when it's time to reveal he's behind all this, as if he suspected it was Strongheart all along. I kinda like that detail, honestly. I don't mind an obvious twist villain if the story isn't really making an effort to hide them from you. That's not the problem here. I just think he's kind of boring. He does some pretty cool, nefarious puppet mastery things, and it all kind of comes together once you uncover the full extent of his machinations. But I feel like this case would just be significantly improved if he was a more fun and memorable antagonist. Speaking of character-related problems, I'm sorry, I just don't like Kazuma as a prosecutor. What does he even do? He's not formidable in the slightest, and I can't think of a single good moment he has on the prosecutor's bench. Even Ryunosuke doesn't particularly shine more than usual here in this case named after him. What's the resolve here? That he just did his job as a defense attorney? When I think of your character showing resolve instead of just solving the case because they have to, I think of Phoenix in Turnabout Goodbyes or Farewell My Turnabout. There was a personal investment in doing whatever he could to save Edgeworth and Maya in those cases. And I just didn't really feel like Ryunosuke had that same extreme drive when it came to saving Barack or Kazuma. He doesn't even get the final victory against Strongheart. Instead, out of nowhere, Herlock Sholmes has invented hologram technology, and it turns out he was broadcasting the entire trial to the Queen of England, who then calls for Strongheart's arrest since the law can't touch him. Yes, you really beat the main villain of the Great Ace Attorney duology with the old "I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die" method. This might have been cool if they foreshadowed Herlock and Iris working on the hologram technology at any other point, but no, it's just a completely random ass pull that's just an unnecessarily lame way to conclude the trial. When we found the secret note Clint left behind that implicated Strongheart, I started laughing with glee knowing that we finally got the bastard. Ace Attorney at its best right there. And then when he weasels his way out of it and Herlock defeats him with the power of the British monarchy, I just stared blankly at my screen like, okay, am I supposed to feel good about this? Did I really accomplish much here? Yeah, I got him to confess, but the idea that everything I did would have been pointless if Herlock wasn't holding a secret Zoom meeting just makes my victory feel kinda hollow? I don't know, I bitched and moaned a lot just to really get across why this case might not have ranked as high as you were expecting. But obviously, you can tell by its placement that I do think it's very good. The story is incredibly satisfying to uncover, and I really had a blast learning what secrets Clint Van Zeeks and Genshin Impact were hiding all this time. Plus, the bits with Judge Jigoku are hella satisfying, as is the Dance of Deduction segment. I also have to shout out the best breakdown in the entire duology. Simply incredible. It's a good case and a satisfying conclusion to the story of both Great Ace Attorney games. But there's enough little things that just add up and prevent me from calling this an all-time great on the level of some of the other finale cases. Oh well, maybe they'll make a Great Ace Attorney 3 and that finale will be a true masterpiece. Once again, color me shocked that the Layton crossover delivered an absolute banger worthy of reaching the upper echelons of this particular list. I'm pretty sure the Golden Court is commonly regarded as the best case in this game, but even then, I don't remember it being this good. It starts out a lot like the previous case, where you have to deal with testimonies regarding the character's positions and what items dropped on the ground first. But the good news is, this case actually realizes that it would be boring as shit if that was what the entire case consisted of. So it gradually blossoms into a shockingly, dramatically potent story worth telling. Before we get to that though, the general setup for this case is easily the most interesting in the game so far. Professor Layton has been turned to gold, meaning he can't bail you out like he did last time. And Maya's accused of being the witch who did this to him. Yeah, I complain about this being a tired development in the right of turnabout, but honestly, it's not really an annoyance here. Sometimes I even kind of forget that Maya's the defendant, since a good chunk of this case is uncovering the mystery behind a related murder 3 months ago. This murder is where the real heart of the story is, featuring one of, if not the most sympathetic culprits in the series, Jean Greyerl. Her backstory is incredibly tragic. Her reading her master's letter and realizing she was wrong to distrust him is genuinely heartbreaking. It's also really something how this case depicts a suicide and a suicide attempt with a shocking level of maturity. There are times where this game really impresses me with what it can do dramatically, in ways that I don't typically see from other games in this series. But this case also does a great job at giving us levity. Like Amir returns and he's just as funny as ever, stealing Leighton's gold arm and pawning it off to get rich. You also cross-examine a parrot again, which sure could be seen as a little been there done that, but it is a good way to let Leighton only fans know that this is what they're missing out on in the wacky world of Ace Attorney. It's also very funny that the parrot's name is Cracker. And there are a few misfires, like this bard Birdley who owns the parrot really does not need to be on the stand once you're done talking to his bird, and yet he just sticks around the entire time and doesn't add anything. I guess he does have a very cunty stance when you see him from behind at the witness stand, so that's worth something, I suppose. The male woman lady could also be a bit much at times, but overall, this is a very well-paced and well-balanced case in terms of tone. I haven't even mentioned all the neat ways it expands the lore of the game's magic system, or how Luke is one of the initial witnesses testifying against Maya, since he genuinely believes she turned the professor to gold. It's a perfectly understandable conclusion for a little kid to come to, especially since he doesn't really know Maya that well at this point in the game. It made a ton of sense, and I'm glad the game was brave enough to briefly put him into an antagonist role, before he eventually rejoins the defense team. Yeah, overall, I don't know what to say. This case genuinely shocked me with how riveting it was, both when I first played it, and on this replay. It also helps that it ends on the single most shocking moment possible. Just, oh man, you gotta give this game a try if you can track down one of the 50 physical copies in existence. I don't think there is a single more overhated final case in the series than Turnabout Succession. Is it the weakest of the 6 mainline final cases? Yes, without a doubt. Is it still an incredible time that stands far above many other cases in the series? Also, yes. I think we might as well get my problems with it out of the way. The biggest one, of course, being... Oh my god, Spark Russell is so ugly, dude, I'm crying. Why does he look like that? Why is he brushing his tongue and his eyes? Why is he strangling himself with a tie? Why do we have to perceive his armpit sweat? Make it stop. He may be the most visually unappealing Ace Attorney character to date. But don't worry, I also think he's kind of annoying personality and gimmick-wise. The constant scoops he poops out can get real annoying real fast. He has his moments, but mostly, I don't like him. Okay. I guess the case has other problems too. The major one really is how much Apollo gets completely shoved to the side in favor of Phoenix completely hijacking the plot and essentially solving the entire mystery so Apollo barely has to. The final climactic showdown against Kristoff, a character who is already in jail, is pretty short and underwhelming, not really making good enough use of Kristoff's pre-existing relationship to Clavier or Apollo. At least taking him down with the jury system makes more sense than taking someone down with the power of the British monarchy, since at least the jury system was actually set up here. Even so, I can certainly understand the argument that this case doesn't really nail the final confrontation. The good news is, I love pretty much everything up to that point. The Mason system is seriously the coolest shit in the world, and I could honestly care less about it not making logistical sense. It is the most inventive and exciting investigation segment in the entire series, as you essentially time travel to uncover this intricate, densely packed mystery that comes together so well. The fate of the Grammarly clan is so compelling as you get to see these egos go head to head in this crazy succession battle, and getting to witness the lunatic puppet master at work laying all these maniacal traps is bone-chilling. I really can't get over the fact that Kristoff did all this for the pettiest of reasons. He truly is the greatest hater of all time. And in unraveling his plan, we get to bear witness to one of the best cases for Phoenix Wright there's ever been. He lost everything, and yet his resolve to not only see this mystery through, but also care for Trucy when she has no one else is so beautiful. Watching him lay this far more elaborate trap than anything Kristoff could dream up is also so thrilling. How is he so smart in this game and then never again after this? It's the beanie man. It's the source of his power. Again, you could certainly argue that this shouldn't be Phoenix's finest hour. I mean, what was this game called again? This may be an odd finale for Apollo's character, but he'll get his due later in the trilogy. And to his credit, the opening stretch defending Vera is far more interesting than anything in Turnabout Corner and Serenade. It's nice to finally get a sympathetic client. I mean, I guess we had Phoenix, but he was kind of an asshole. And it really warms my heart when Vera warms up to you and Trucy. Sure, this case may feel a bit lopsided, with the Mason system being a bit too long, and the final battle with Kristoff being way too short. Sure, it's somewhat difficult to even wrap your head around what the Mason system even is. But underneath all the rough edges lies an immensely satisfying mystery that perfectly clears up all the loose ends Turnabout Trump presented. And I always have the best time putting every last piece of this puzzle together. But ultimately, the real reason I have this case ranked so high is because Dick Gumshoe shows up for a cameo! Yeah! I think Dick Gumshoe should have been in every single case in the series. Even the Great Ace Attorney ones. I said what I said.
Big
building!
A Turnabout Forsaken is my least favorite case in Investigations 2. And it's this high up. You know, I think this might straight up be one of my favorite games of all time. This is yet another incredibly compelling link in the tightly woven chain that is this game's narrative. Introducing the character who probably would have served as the main villain of any other Ace Attorney game, Excelsius Winner. Honestly though, compared to nearly every other aspect of Investigations 2, he's kind of the game's most disappointing elements. I don't know, he's just a little too weird to be all that intimidating. I don't really get his whole crying gimmick, and since this is a shorter case, I feel like he's not established as well as he could have been here. Obviously, he still has stuff to do in the next case, but catching him here doesn't feel as impactful as I think it should. I mean, I kept expecting some sort of explanation for why he treats Eustace so horribly. Yeah, it turns out it's just because he's a dick. I mean, it's kind of funny. Hell, he's kind of funny in general. He's definitely not a bad character, and he has some villainous charm, but he doesn't really stand out as much as he should, I feel. I also have one other small nitpick, and that's the fact that Florence Needler has, like, no upset sprites. It's really weird to be calling her out for being an accomplice for murder, and she's just smiling away while you do it. Otherwise, this case is truly fantastic. Kay having amnesia is kind of whatever conceptually, but what it allows for is for her to be incredibly vulnerable, both emotionally and legally. And it adds a nice emotional undercurrent to this case. It's really funny seeing Edgeworth refer to her as a dear acquaintance early on, but it's really powerful to see him call her a friend at the end of the case. It's an intensely personal one, and that moment where he gives up his prosecutor's badge in order to pursue the truth and exonerate Kay hits so hard. I also think this case is wonderful for Verity Gavel's character, as she finally stops excessively antagonizing you and stands with you once it becomes clear that Excelsius is the true guilty party. What a great moment for her character. It's so awesome seeing everyone ganging up on him and Eustace, who ends up going through a really tragic crisis of faith when it comes to his dad. Kay is obviously really sympathetic, Franziska has some good interactions with the rest of the cast, Lada is actually really helpful for a change. There's just a lot of great character stuff here. Not only getting to witness Edgeworth further his arc and convictions, but giving so many members of the supporting cast a chance to shine. Emma's also here for some reason. I mean, God forbid you find some other way to use luminol fluid. Nope, she's the only character who can provide it. Okay. I mean, I like her character, so I can't really complain that much. The setting is also pretty neat, with you uncovering this secret auction tied to the mysterious 51st floor of Big Building. Genuinely great name. Yeah, overall, this case is a real winner. I mean, they call it the human race because someone has to win it. And that somebody is me. That's the best line in fiction, if we're being honest.
Mrs. Obama, get down!
Yeah, this wasn't really a contest. My favorite first case in the series by far is the one in Investigations 2. Turnabout Trigger. Yeah, I played the new official localization first, so that's the names I know everyone by. I'm sorry, I'm gonna call them by their official names, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, this case is far and away the most exciting and fun first case. Aside from Turnabout Trump, it's the only one that I feel can really stand toe-to-toe with the other cases in its game. Partially because the events here are hugely important for plot developments in future cases, but also because it's just a super engaging and satisfying case to complete in its own right. What's more interesting than having to solve a murder? Having to solve the attempted assassination of a president and a murder. This case is so good at keeping you guessing in terms of who the culprit is and what's even going on, which isn't something a lot of first cases can say. The new characters, from the overeager disciple of Lada, Tabby Lloyd, to the cool as hell gunslinging bodyguard Bronco Knight, are instantly enjoyable and memorable additions. And that's on top of the return of Shelly the motherfucking killer? As soon as he walked into frame, I gasped. What is an infamous, deadly assassin from a high-stakes final case in the original trilogy doing in the first damn case of this one? His presence alone makes this one of the most tense cases as you try in vain to deduce what his possible motive could be. And even when he's out of the picture, the mystery in this case is still so satisfying to unravel. And then you get to the mystery on top of the mystery. Oh my god, it's so good! And not only is the story gripping and the characters fantastic, but the setting is immaculate, investigating Gourd Lake after the shooting, as well as the president's personal plane. It's a lot more interesting than Edgeworth's office and the hallway outside Edgeworth's office, if you ask me. Speaking of which, how did I dislike Turnabout Visitor so much, but come to love this case when they're both starter investigations cases? It's pretty simple, really. Instead of interrogating just one person, you interrogate 4. That sounds like a recipe for bloated pacing in a case that would go on too long. But it's miraculously not. I never felt like this case was overstaying its welcome, and a lot of that has to do with the brand new mechanics they introduce. Not just regular cross-examination, but logic chess. A great twist on the formula that you get to do twice in this case. It also ties in super well with the chess motif the characters in the case have got going on. Now, is this case perfect? I mean, obviously not. I feel like despite the mystery being very intriguing, the actual questions the case asks you to answer are pretty damn easy, even by first case standards. I'll never get over the fact that Edgeworth doesn't immediately realize that there is a laser pointed at the president's forehead. Like, I didn't think the answer to what's the difference between these two pictures of the president was the fact that on one of them he doesn't have a laser on his forehead. I thought anyone with a brain could figure that out, but apparently these guys think it's a birthmark. But hey, at least the president makes a "This is Sparta" reference. You, sir, just won the internet for today. Anyway, I'd love to go in a little more detail, but this is one of those rare first cases where there's a lot of actual stuff to spoil. So, I won't. Just know that this is an amazing start to one of the greatest Ace Attorney games ever made, and easily my pick for the best first case in all of Ace Attorney.
Back from the dead, assholes!
Man, Greatest Attorney sure knows how to kill it with their third cases, don't they? The Return of the Great Departed Soul is incredibly engaging from start to finish, offering a very unique storyline with a ton of fun and legitimately dark and creepy elements on top of it. It really runs the full gamut of what an Ace Attorney case can do. And while I don't necessarily see it as one of the series' all-time greats, I mean, it's still pretty great. Ace Attorney.
Shut the fuck.
The whole plot where you have to defend a quirky scientist who insists his mystical teleportation device really works is unique and enjoyable. It fits the overall vibe and mystery of the case a lot better than Time Travel did in Turnabout Time Traveler. I'm a little mixed on Hairbrain himself. I mean, we literally just had a hyperactive goofball client in the previous case with Soseki. And while Hairbrain is far toned down and more likable than Soseki, I mean, it still just feels a little repetitive. Like, these are the only kinds of clients you can defend in this game. I don't know. At least Hairbrain constantly undermining us in court makes a lot of sense, since he doesn't care what happens to him, as long as his scientific secrets stay under wraps. There's also a ton of other great details in the first half of this case. Like Herlock having a subplot where he's broke as f*** and needs to make money by pretending to be a wax sculpture at a museum. Or the random little bohemian boy and Italian balloon salesman witnesses who show up in court to quirkily testify and then just never appear again. Silly. I also love the development of Gina becoming a detective under Gregson. Getting to work with a novice and see her learn the job right before your eyes is so cool. The case is pretty solid in its first half, but it really gets great in the second half. piling on a sinister mystery regarding a serial killer known as the Professor. Seeing how that case and the wax figures play into the main mystery you were hired to solve is really satisfying. I got legit chills from the way two spells described her mission to capture the likeness of the corpse of the Professor. I like the culprit and his odd robotic movements and mannerisms a lot. I especially love that scene during the investigation where they break into his office and find a pipe bomb, and Ryunosuke doesn't even know what a pipe bomb is. Even apart from that, something about this quintet of idiots, Ryunosuke, Susato, Herlock, Gregson, and Gina, all stumbling into this room together and accidentally cornering the culprit, it just felt very satisfying. This is the case where the ensemble cast of this duology finally really clicked for me, in the same way as the original trilogy cast. Unfortunate it took this long since my time with them was almost over at this point, but what are you gonna do? Even Barack really starts to warm up to you at this point, going so far as to sit you down in court and finally explain to you why he's so racist. How nice of him. This was a wonderful case. I think my only other real issue with it is, you know how I talked about the culprit earlier? I kinda sorta lied. He's not the culprit technically. He's the guy that made this entire murder plan, and yet the actual killer was this other lady who we don't spend a lot of time with beforehand. Within the context of just this case, I genuinely feel like this was kind of unnecessary. I mean, if it had led to a more substantial and mind-blowing reveal, like they seem to be implying it was, then I would have been down for it. But again, it didn't really feel like it needed to be here within the context of just this case. I feel like she could have benefited from a little more screen time and build-up at the very least. Overall though, this case rules. It's unbelievably fun, with a ton of mystery and suspense at every turn. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Kazuma comes back. Honestly, it's not really that important to anything else going on in this case. And yet it's partially what the case is named after. That's kinda funny.
I fell for hours!
Turnabout Beginnings may be one of those precursor to the final case type deals, but it's so uniquely dark and fucked up in its own right that it manages to stand out as the best non-final fourth case in the whole series. Honestly, I feel like it's kind of what people say Turnabout Trump is. A case with a shocking plot development that feels way more potent because it was actually given proper build-up earlier on. Before we get to the ending though, this is a great chance to see the very first case Mia and Edgeworth worked on. We get to see Diego Armando, who may be incredibly misogynistic, but damn is he hot. We also get the judge's brother who says some really weird things about Dahlia. Oh yeah, Dahlia's back, and she's just as delightfully manipulative and sinister as ever. Seeing her master plan come together as she manipulates the affections of Terry Falls is tantalizing. But it's also kinda hard to root for Falls since he is very much a pedophile. Welcome back, Turnabout Big Top. Honestly though, this element of the plot fits this twisted case a lot better than the weirdo freak circus case. One flaw with Trials and Tribulations writing is that I don't think they really go into how Dahlia likely ended up this way, due in part to being groomed. I just feel like they didn't really think those implications through within the text of the game. But regardless of how it happened, she is indeed a very cold and monstrous person in the present day. And seeing Mia come short of taking her down for the heartless murder of her own sister is gut-wrenching. And since this is a prequel to the first case of the game, you're always on edge because you know she's gonna get away. You're just like, how does it happen? This knowledge hangs over the courtroom in an incredibly heavy manner, and it gets paid off horrifically when Terry commits suicide on the stand, going out the same way Phoenix would have in Turnabout Memories. I wouldn't call it an emotional moment, that requires me to be invested in Terry as a character, but it's so damn shocking that it really sticks with you long after the case concludes. This is a perfect setup to the darkness awaiting you in the game's final case. I don't know why the judge's brother is Canadian though. How did that even happen?
I am an ace detective. A celebrity!
The Stolen Turnabout is goated for so many reasons, but most of them are Luke at me. Oh my god, this guy is such an amazing character. I can never get enough of his pompous attitude, incredible design, and insanely goofy antics. Here I am, the tragic clown! I swear to god, I'm so obsessed with him. I mean, who even thinks of this? Pinning yourself for a theft case in order to have an alibi for the murder you just committed. His plan is so insane and elaborate without being too over the top and complicated. Just Oh man, what a phenomenal culprit. I also like how it's not immediately obvious that it's him, solely because he seems like he would be too obvious. Like, he's the most suspicious looking man who ever walked the face of the earth. So surely we can rule him out. I even feel like if you didn't know how this game goes, they do a pretty solid job at the beginning of suggesting that maybe, just maybe, he's gonna take over Gumshoe's role as the main detective for the rest of the game. Considering how Gumshoe briefly appears and then kinda dips for that first investigation segment, as Luke Atme takes center stage. That doesn't last long, of course, but hey, the great ace detective almost got off scot-free in my mind, and that's worth something. I promise there are other reasons this case is really great. One of my favorite elements of it is how nicely it calls back to Justice for All's second case. You know, the one we just talked about like a minute ago. Following up on the vase of Ami Faye and having it get fully repaired by the returning Adrian Andrews. So nice to see her again. This case calls back to Reunion and Turnabout in a very natural way, while also subtly priming you for elements that are gonna come into play in the game's finale. Like, when Maya talks about Kurine Village and what Morgan Faye did to her, it all feels very natural, and it's great to reestablish all this before Bridge to the Turnabout picks all these threads back up. Speaking of which, much like every second case, this one has the job of introducing the new prosecutor, Godot. And boy does he make a great impression. That intriguing, mysterious hook of who he is, what the whole mask thing is about, and why he's so aggressively anti-Phoenix. Oh man, is it all laid out so beautifully, while also perfectly positioning him as an intimidating force to go up against in court. I also really like the little reaction he has upon seeing spirit-channeled Mia for the first time. But the true heart of this case is the incredibly sweet couple Ron and Desiree Delight. I love seeing how far this goofy little thief boy and his baddie wife will go for each other. I like how she actually helps out by finding the vase, and the bits where he trails off and gets ignored are pretty funny without ever getting old. It's just nice to have a case where every character in it, both new and old, is an absolute winner. I mean, we even get to meet the crucial and iconic character, the judge's brother. Now that's what I'm talking about. Oh, you know what? I take back my winner comment. I forgot Larry's in this one. I'm not the biggest Larry fan, guys. I don't know how to break it to you. Overall, a fantastic case, though not quite one of the all-time best. Despite Luke Atme's brilliant plan to secure an alibi, the murder itself is pretty simple, and the locations you have to investigate are equally standard for this series. Progression can also be a little difficult to figure out at times. Like, how am I supposed to know that you have to present Kane Bullard's profile to Gumshoe in order to move the story along? Come on now. But none of these are huge issues. This is an awesome case overall. And I'm not just saying that because I correctly guessed which of Luke Atme's statements I needed to press on my first try in his final testimony. Figuring that out might be the most proud moment of my entire Ace Attorney career, in all honesty.
Science rules.
If there's one case in the series where I really have to take into account its gameplay as well as the story it tells, it would have to be Rise from the Ashes. This bonus case, added retroactively to the end of the first game after the rest of the original trilogy had already been written, is just a lot. That's the best way to describe it. It's one of the longest cases in the entire series. It adds a huge cast of brand new characters, and it introduces a plethora of new mechanics that utilize the unique features of the Nintendo DS, most of which return in the Apollo Justice trilogy, but not in the two games that come after this one chronologically in the original trilogy. It's really funny playing these games in order and learning all these new mechanics that you straight up do not use in the games following this one. I do like a lot of these brand new forensic investigation methods Emma introduces to you, but the sheer number of them can feel a little bit excessive. Oh well, at least we don't have to analyze a shitty video over and over again with an incredibly annoying song playing in the background. Oh, wait a minute, that's exactly what we do! How could I forget? This stupid Mike Meekins video is honestly way worse than 3D Orange Clavier in Turnabout Serenade. It's just nauseating. Oh yeah, this would also be a great time to mention that Mike Meekins himself is a nauseating character. He's one of my least favorites in the entirety of Ace Attorney. Just so loud and annoying, and the extended trial bit with him on the second day is irritating as all hell. Every other character in this case is so interesting and has so much relevance to its overarching plot. And then you just got this bozo. How is he allowed to be the only recurring character in this case case aside from Emma. It's not fair. And then there's that stupid damn blue badger jar. Oh my god, why is it so finicky? My girlfriend was playing this case for the first time, and she actually got the jar puzzle on the first try, so maybe it's just a skill issue on all of our parts. Oh well. There really is a lot holding Rise from the Ashes back from true perfection. It's a case bursting at the seams with ideas and ambition, but that comes at the expense of it feeling overstuffed in a lot of ways. I'm sure all these new features were really novel when the DS was new, but they just feel far too excessive nowadays and contribute to an undeniable sense of bloat. And that's a shame, because the crazy thing is, I think this case is one of the most outstanding stories and casts of characters in the entire series. You immediately get attached to the sisters despite Lana's standoff demeanor. You're intrigued by the mystery of why she's insisting on her guilt, and it's so satisfying piecing her reasoning together. Emma comes across as a bit of a science-flavored copy of Maya, but she has enough of her own personality and quirks to still stand out. I prefer her characterization in the Apollo Justice trilogy, but she's a fun and sweet character here too. Until this playthrough, I forgot what a good case this is for Edgeworth. Some people don't like how this case kinda retcons Justice for All and had him return to prosecuting one more time before faking his own death. But I think it's very appropriate for him to try and get back to normal after Turnabout Goodbyes, only to become profoundly affected by a highly stressful case that dredges up a mistake he made 2 years ago, resulting in this being the final straw for him. I feel like getting to witness this only adds to his arc in Justice for All. It's a great piece of the puzzle to have. Gumshoe is as endearing as ever, and the new side characters who aren't named Mike Meekins are outstanding. Angel Star is a fun character with an interesting backstory, and while she's not as hot as Quercus Alba, she's still pretty good looking. Jake Marshall seems like a silly, one-off Texas Ranger weirdo, until you realize just how crucial he is to the case as a whole, since he needs to avenge his brother. But the best character in this damn case, by far, is my personal favorite villain in the entire Ace Attorney series, Damon Gans. This guy is perfect. He's an incredibly menacing foe, but he's also exceptionally hilarious. The one quirk he has where he just blankly stares at you for 5 seconds makes me burst out laughing every time. He's so jovial and joyous almost every time you see him. So when he says something threatening, it sends chills down your spine. The sheer amount of unchecked power he holds makes him one of the most formidable opponents in the whole series. One who you just barely manage to defeat in one of the most brilliant gambits I've ever seen Phoenix Wright pull off. Seeing this come at the very end of the game where he starts his legal career is incredible. Because at the beginning of the game, you never could have imagined this little piss baby who needs Mia to hold his hand all the time could accomplish this. Truly incredible. This case may be long, and you can definitely feel it in the gameplay department, but man is the story rich and compelling enough to justify it. I don't think it comes together quite as expertly as Turnabout Goodbyes does, but it's absolutely in the same ballpark, and a more than worthy conclusion to the original game. But for real though, if I have to see Mike Meekins again, I am going to destroy Capcom's headquarters.
You're going to prison.
The Captive Turnabout is a case that I am shocked does not get more love and attention. I've consistently seen people rank it as not a bad case, but the closest thing that Investigations 2 has to a subpar case. And that's insane to me, because to this day, it is one of my favorites, not only in the game, but in the entire series. With that said, it does have a definite big problem that absolutely prevents it from ranking at the very top of the second case list for me. But damn it, I love it anyway. I kinda don't even know where to start. Right off the bat, the fact that you're investigating the murder of Bronco Knight, the culprit of the last case, is insane. It's the first real indication that this isn't gonna be like other Ace Attorney games. Nothing is a standalone incident in this story. Every case is connected through multiple characters. What an amazing hook right out of the gate. And on top of that, the setting is outstanding. You wouldn't think a prison would be that interesting to explore, but by God, this place is wacky. Verity. The fact that every prisoner is given an animal companion who all have free access throughout the entire prison while the prisoners don't. The fact that the circus regularly comes to perform here. The fact that you get to see Frank Saw It of all people again and interrogate him as a witness. He's honestly way more fun here than he was in his original appearance in the first game. And then there's the new characters. Rocco Carceretto as the fun, plucky boxer whose prison escape just so happens to get mixed up in the murder plot. Fifi Lagarde, who's a pretty decent culprit that I saw coming a mile away, just based off of Ace Attorney conventions of introducing a character and not doing a whole lot with them initially. But hey, she's fun and her motivation is so cool. Killing Knight out of fear that he's working for the top dog prisoner she can't stand. Bodhidharma Canis. Words cannot express how much I love this guy. I'm genuinely shocked there aren't more people talking about him. He is the rawest damn character Ace Attorney has ever put out. This blind assassin with a chilling theme, creepy design, murder dog, the works. I just love doing this weird, off-putting voice for him every time I read his dialogue. Yes, Helmut. Yes, we are going to beat Miles Edgeworth to death. I love how the assumption is that him and his murder dog did the deed, before we find out it was all orchestrated by Lagarde as a way of getting him transferred out of her perfect paradise prison. Such a unique motivation. It's an absolute blast to uncover. And really, any time spent with Canis is just dripping with atmosphere and malice. Is it any wonder why I always look forward to this case? The Captive Turnabout also has the privilege of introducing brand new major characters to this game, like Eddie Fender, Verity Gavel, and Eustace Winter, baby! Yeah! It's winning time! This segment is already long enough, so I'm not gonna get too into them, but suffice to say, 2 out of 3 of these characters are flawlessly introduced. We'll get to Verity. First, I have to give special mention to the fact that Eustace's first ever testimony is so wrong that pressing every single one of his statements will get them to change. Now that's how you use Ace Attorney mechanics to establish a character's whole deal. Just brilliant. I also adore this case from a character perspective for Edgeworth, since it's a rare glimpse of him doing some honest-to-goodness defense attorney work after he's removed as prosecutor. I really like seeing him struggle with his newfound temporary role. I mean, Verity really clocks his tea when she points out that he didn't even bother to find out that Simeon was in the circus. Oh yeah, I forgot about Simeon. Yep, I mean, he's there. There's not really a whole lot to say about this character. He's just a fine motivation for Edgeworth to want to help a helpless person for a change, and begin his arc of wanting to try to live up to his father's ideals for a change. I feel like this was the first case in the investigation's duology that actually had interesting things to say about Edgeworth as a protagonist. Things that perfectly carry over into the third case of the game. There are just so many other great things I could mention, like the fact that this case redeems the concept of the circus and brings both it and Regina back without including a bunch of pedophiles this time. Or how about the fact that I'm pretty sure this is the only time in the series where you get to play as Dick Gumshoe during this one part where you're using the metal detector in the yard. It's everything I could have ever possibly dreamed of and more. Okay, genuinely, this case seems to have it all. An interesting setting, awesome characters, Edgeworth telling an elephant to cease and desist hitting K, and more funny Eustace Winter moments than even I, the biggest Eustace Winter fan I know, could handle. What could possibly be wrong with this case? Yeah, it's too long. I mean, I love it, and I was tempted to say you can't have too much of a good thing at first. But yeah, there is in fact a lot of fat you can and should trim. Like, Rocco Carceretto's entire character honestly didn't need to be there, as much as I like him. You could have just made the polar bear Frank Saw It's animal buddy and cut out this entire subplot about Rocco escaping. It's ultimately little more than a red herring when you already have the perfect red herring in Canis. I'll admit that Carceretto's involvement did briefly make me doubt my Fifi Lagarde theory the first time I played the game, but I don't know if it was worth how much time it takes up. On top of a video investigation, a lengthy Little Thief segment on the last day, and having to conduct this investigation while constantly getting railroaded by Verity at every turn. Eustace is a funny nuisance, and putting him in his place adds a bit of levity, but Verity felt a little too overused and obstinate for such a smart character. By the time she concocted a new crackpot theory about how Simeon committed the murder in his 15 minutes of offstage time during the circus performance, I couldn't even follow it, and I honestly didn't even even feel like it was necessary to. It was like talking to a brick wall, and not a hilarious brick wall like Eustace. Verity gets better as the game goes on, but I'd argue this was a bit of a meandering first impression. And that's the thing about this case as a whole. Much as I adore so much of it, it just meanders and goes off track just a little too much for me to really say it's one of Ace Attorney's finest cases. One of my favorites, sure, but not one of the finest. If it just contained the roughly 75 to 80% of what's in the game currently that it actually needed, then I would unquestionably call it an S tier case. I don't think it's missing anything, I just think it needs some stuff taken away. With that said, it does have Eustace Winter in it, so that makes it an objectively perfect case. Sorry, I don't make the rules.
Magic everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't really have to overthink this. The best second case in the series is pretty easily the magical turnabout from Spirit of Justice. As much as I love the stolen turnabout and the captive turnabout, I can't really say either one of them are among some of the all-timer best cases in the series. But this one, I mean, it might just be up there. It kind of has everything going for it. I have very mixed thoughts on Spirit of Justice as a whole, and a large part of that comes from the fact that it is by far the Ace Attorney game with the weirdest structure. There's this dramatic, revolutionary story being told in this foreign kingdom, but we only see it unfold in every other case, since we also gotta have Apollo and Athena stuff to do back home. It can make for some awkward tonal whiplash. But to be totally fair, I think that only really comes into play with the game's fourth case. The magical turnabout makes a great argument for why this format could potentially work, offering an immensely cool and engaging mystery that makes use of the fact that Phoenix is away, letting Apollo and Athena tackle a very high-stakes case all by themselves, and perhaps most brilliantly of all, centering the whole thing around Trucy. Honestly, I did the math, and I think she might be my favorite female character in the entire series. Every bit as plucky and quirky as Maya, but with an air of tremendous capability and showmanship. The magical flair that she brings to the series cannot be overstated. And after she was so rudely sidelined in Dual Destinies, it was so nice of this case to remind us that, yes, she is in fact a major character in this trilogy. You also gotta give her credit. She lasted a really long time after her introduction without getting accused of murder. I mean, Maya and Athena get accused of it in the same game they're introduced. Anyway, I'm genuinely shocked it took them this long to do a murder mystery that revolves around a live event. One of Trucy's magic shows, in fact. It allows for such a cool and creative setting for you to investigate. One that really tickles my theater-loving brain. I was kind of predestined to adore this case, considering it involves one of my favorite characters in one of my favorite settings. But the good news is, the writing here is also top-notch. Bonnie and Betty are unbelievably fun characters with a great double act going on. But the star of the show here, with one of the pettiest motivations, craziest backstories, and most undeniable levels of aura, is Tony Stark himself, Roger Rettens. Slowly figuring out that this sleazy TV producer is a disgraced former member of Troop Grimmari is genuinely mind-blowing. I feel like the 3DS games had a tendency to overuse and somewhat cheapen the whole culprit revealing their true self gimmick, with it not always being warranted to the extent that they take it. But here, it's incredibly natural from a story perspective, which makes it all the more chilling when Roger reverts into arsonist magician mode. Just the fact that he held this grudge against Trucy's family for 13 years, and went to all this trouble to create one of the most unexpectedly elaborate murder plots in the whole series. I mean, it's just insane, it really is. Who would even think of creating a remote murder system like this? And as if all of that wasn't enough, he also significantly raises the stakes on you by tricking Trucy into signing a contract that forces her to owe $3 million if she doesn't perform the show. He then repossesses everything the right agency owns, dramatically upping the stakes, since if you don't prove Trucy innocent in one day, your entire law office will be seized and shut down. It's a truly immense high-stakes mess for you to get into in just the second case of the game. And the entire time, this smug asshole is filming and mocking you. Oh man, I wanna say he's so hateable, but god, I just can't help but love him. What a phenomenal culprit with a great identity twist, chilling true persona, and equally chilling breakdown. You also have so much variety in the gameplay here, from dusting a coffin for fingerprints, perceiving, doing the mood matrix, and intuitively analyzing not one, but 2 different videos. Hell, Trucy gives one of the most unique testimonies in the whole series, where she demonstrates a magic trick for the court right before your eyes. It's honestly pretty challenging to pick out the contradiction here, but in a really good way. Maybe the first day of investigation is a little long in the tooth, but otherwise, this case is always engaging and never gets old. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what really makes this case so special. The prosecutor. That was a lie. I'm lying. Nayuta is one of the worst characters in all of Ace Attorney, but he's tolerable here. He thankfully doesn't really drag the case down too much. I like when he says, "What's crack-a-lackin', homie?" No. The real element of the case I find super special is how much insight we get into Trucy as a character that even the Apollo Justice game didn't fully provide. This is Trucy at her lowest point, desperately trying to convince everyone around her that she's fine by maintaining her bubbly, showman-like demeanor. But ultimately, despite how capable she presents herself, she's a horribly frightened and traumatized teenage girl. Helping her find her inner strength and defending her against a truly evil and vengeful man who she never did anything wrong to makes this one of the easiest cases to get emotionally invested in. It's a wonderful coda to the events of Apollo Justice that involve the Grammarly family. It's a great showcase for the resolve of Trucy and Apollo. It's got a tremendously fun setting. Every single character is great except Nayuta. It is undoubtedly my pick for the greatest second case in any Ace Attorney game. Turnabout Revolution, or as I like to call it, the resolve of Apollo Justice. People have clowned on this game for years for inventing a needlessly elaborate and absurd new backstory for Apollo that he conveniently never mentioned until now. But here's the thing. Yeah, it's silly, but it allows for some of the most interesting character drama Apollo has ever had. His debut game relegated him to be a pawn to Phoenix and Kristoff's machinations. He played third fiddle in Dual Destinies as his contribution to the overarching narrative consisted of mourning a PNG who arguably doesn't exist. Even leading up to this case in Spirit of Justice, it just felt like he and Athena were holding down the fort, while Phoenix got the main plot all to himself. I actually kind of dig the fact that Apollo hijacks Phoenix's narrative as revenge here, and takes the lead on one of the most elaborate and insane murder plots in the entire series. This is like top 2 craziest cases if we're judging them solely by how the murder takes place. It's a sheer joy to untangle all the elaborate ways spirit channeling is used for evil. You know, after we solve the completely separate civil trial murder, which is also part of the case. Yeah, Turnabout Revolution is the longest case in the series, and that's because it's kinda 2 cases. The civil trial in America, all about figuring out who owns the Founder's Orb, and the real meat and potatoes in Kurine. That's the better half in my opinion, but the civil trial's great too. Going up against Phoenix in court is a great way to test Apollo's capabilities, and I really like the characters like the smarmy politician and the adorable army buff. Holy shit, she has a helicopter. Mainly though, this portion of the case is great for its investigation segment that slows down and focuses on the relationship between Apollo and Dirk. We finally get to know this mysterious rebel leader, and he's awesome. One of the best characters in the whole game. I love seeing him try and be there for Apollo after all this time. There's something really cool and unique about seeing that image of Apollo and Dirk exploring the cave together. Like, it's very rare to get a third-person perspective of the character you're playing as in an Ace Attorney case. It really sells the visual novel aspect of the series and makes this moment feel like a true adventure, which also applies to this portion where Apollo almost drowns and needs to be saved by Dirk. It's just such a unique method of storytelling for Ace Attorney, and it really sticks out as one of my favorite aspects of the case. The first portion, which clearly should have been its own separate case, considering it makes more sense to split this than it did for the final cases of Dual Destinies and Great Ace Attorney 2, but I digress. The first portion is really great, but the second portion, oh man. The reveal that Dirk has been dead the whole time is earth-shattering. It really shook me to my core and blew my mind in equal measure. And the way the spirit channeling surprises keep piling up, with Inga also dying and promptly getting resurrected without his knowledge. The switching between Maya and Amara channeling different people. And oh yeah, Amara is alive actually, she wasn't assassinated, and she's been disguised as Rayfa's handmaiden the entire time. She's also Rayfa's true mother, and Rayfa and Nayuda are siblings, and Amara went on the run with the love of her life, Dirk, who also didn't try to assassinate her in the fire that killed Apollo's biological father, but Dirk became his adopted father. This case refuses to stop surprising you. It just keeps piling on crazy twist after crazy twist, while miraculously never buckling under its own weight, and maintaining a strong emotional core thanks to Apollo and Dirk's affection for one another. Rayfa gets a great chance to stand up to her evil mother. It's not as good as the way a certain winner does it in a certain other case, but you know, it's pretty good. The dance and devotion segments are trickier than they've ever been, but so satisfying to pull off. Edgeworth is here for some reason. Seriously, why did he come here? I know he pulls a lot of strings for us and helps with this investigation, but he still kind of feels a little shoved in there. At least we got to see the dog biting his cravat. That was worth the price of admission alone. Overall, it's an amazing case with a lot of strong character scenes and shocking moments. I thought about ranking it even higher since its highs are truly some of the coolest Ace Attorney moments to me. But it does have two slight low points in my opinion. First is, say it with me now, Nayuda. Even here at the end, when we're supposed to learn why he acts the way he does, I mean, okay, you're under the Queen's thumb because of Rayfa, sure. But then why are you such a dick in America? Why did you tell Trucy to go to hell? I really didn't believe this guy was a kind, caring person deep down. His redemption feels very artificial here. And man, is his life not a good thing to bet the stakes of the case on in the last third. When I was told he would be put to death if we found Garen guilty, I said, okay, well that sounds good to me. I feel like I was definitely supposed to care about his fate and want to fight for him to make it out okay. But man, I couldn't care less, even here at the end. Even when he removes his glove to reveal his defiant dragon mark, and he flings the glove at the screen in the final boss of things that would go hard on the 3DS. That moment just landed with a thud for me, unfortunately. And the second character who's kind of whatever is Garen. It's kind of fun trying to take down a goofy, over-the-top, regal maniac who can rewrite the law as she sees fit. But she's kind of a boring character with very little personality other than evil. She doesn't really tank the case that much, but I can't say she's all that special to me. The case also drags a little bit towards the end. But before that point, it's incredibly riveting and a really fantastic way to tie up Spirit of Justice's overarching story of revolution. On my first playthrough, I really needed this case to be good to salvage things a little bit, since I wasn't huge on the previous two cases in Kurine, and the somewhat disposable nature of Storyteller didn't really help things. But in my opinion, Revolution makes this whole game worthwhile. It's an excellent final case for Apollo, tying up hopefully every last loose end about his past, and allowing him a chance to flex the incredible legal skills he's accrued over the course of the trilogy. A great way to go out. I couldn't be prouder of him.
Scary clown.
Turnabout for the ages. There is no better name. This is an absolutely outstanding conclusion to the most densely packed and tightly interwoven game in all of Ace Attorney. It finally ties up every last loose end from all four of the previous cases, all while threatening to buckle under the weight of its own scope and ambition multiple times. It's a miracle then that it keeps all of these plates in the air so expertly without any of them falling. The miracle happened, you guys! Don't get me wrong, this case isn't perfect, nor do I even consider it to be the best case in Investigations 2, if you can believe that. I think sometimes there's so much going on plot-wise that the emotional impact present in a lot of these other final cases, and some of the other cases in this game, doesn't shine through as much here. It is there, but this one is a little bit less focused on Edgeworth's path in life than you might have assumed based on the previous cases. Another emotional undercurrent they try to attempt is Verity Gavel's connection with her adopted son, Sean Fenn. There is a real canon Ace Attorney character named after Sean Penn. Why did we have to do this? Seeing a different side of Verity is cool like this, but I'm gonna be honest, I just do not give a shit about Sean Fenn. He's kind of a normal, bratty kid who you're meant to feel sympathy towards when he finds out the truth about his dad and how he never got to meet him. But all that time spent on him feels like a bit too much of a detour from finding out who the true culprit behind everything is. The middle section of the case is still cool, with a great investigation segment across multiple time periods, and a fascinating conspiracy for you to uncover regarding multiple villains you already took down in previous cases. It's really good, but it definitely felt like it needed tightening up, and had a bit too much going on. But the beginning and the ending of this case are both perfect. The urgency of trying to find the kidnapped Sean, only to come across Eustace Winter, and finally give him the courage to complete his arc and become a true, respectable prosecutor, is incredible. It honestly moved me so much seeing Edgeworth encourage Eustace to keep going and find his own prosecutor's path. So when Eustace finally uncovers the evidence and finds the courage necessary to take his dad down, it's a moment that just brings the house down. I honestly teared up a little bit on this replay, seeing him say, "Thanks for everything, Excelsius, and goodbye." What a phenomenal conclusion for this phenomenal character. And of course, we have to talk about the great Simeon Saint, one of the best twist villains to ever do it in this series. I didn't suspect him for a second until this case, and having the animal trainer also be the one manipulating the people who wronged him and having them do exactly what he wants from them, unbelievable. The fact that he froze the body to throw off the time of death, just like his father did. Are you kidding me? I can't believe what a well thought out villain he is. His sprite work, the way he imitates characters, his callous disregard for life, it's just so delicious. But he's also very much a victim who suffered from the evil actions of people like Excelsius Winter and Fifi Lagarde. On top of all of this being kicked off because his own father used him for selfish reasons, it's satisfying to see the traps he laid for Winter and Lagarde come to fruition, even if we need to take him down for hurting innocent people along the way. And the way his mindset was largely shaped by the influence of Canis. Oh man. I absolutely loved how they incorporated him into the finale. It's crazy how he just broke out of prison to figure out who the young pup who saved his life was. And then once he finds out and saves Simeon from the killer, he's just like, anyway, I should be getting back to prison now. Yes. Honestly, they should probably just give Canis the death penalty at this point. They killed Dahlia and they were gonna kill Blackwell for far less. I think it's pretty clear there's no way to actually keep Canis or his influence contained. Oh well. I also think the discovery of Simeon's true nature is a great way to give Edgeworth a crisis of faith, since he did play at being a defense attorney and mess up in the process by not seeing through Simeon's facade. His conclusion where he decides to take back his prosecutor's badge makes sense and feels earned. And I love the way he, Kay, and Gumshoe vow to keep fighting crime together as a trio. And we never saw Kay or Gumshoe again after this. Oops. Regardless, this is an absolutely outstanding, climactic conclusion to an absolutely phenomenal game. It may be a little messy with a little too much going on. Sometimes the amount of characters on screen at any given time can feel a little bit like the final season of Stranger Things. But boy, is this grand, sprawling epic of a case more than worth the journey to reach it. And again, this isn't even the best case in Investigations 2! Chocolate! I don't know how you can possibly make the argument that Turnabout Legacy isn't the best third case in the entire series by a landslide. It's kind of miraculous how cool and unique it is from a structural perspective, and how basically everything about it works. Every single character in the case, both old and new, is enjoyable. Yes, even Larry. This is honestly his best appearance since the first Ace Attorney game. He's pretty fun here. But on top of him, you got the immensely sweet Judy Bound, the astoundingly callous and overconfident Carmelo Gusto, and honestly my favorite character introduced in this case, Delicia Scones. The fact that she does not age in 18 years is so funny, and those stupid ass nicknames she gives to every character just crack me up. Oh my god, what a delight. Every character here has some unique and crazy motivation you just don't see very often in the series. I mean, a pharmacist entering a confectionery competition for the sake of winning a cookbook with a bunch of formulas for her employers to use? Kooky. The fact that this is a murder revolving around a desserts competition also really excites me as a massive sweets enjoyer. It's really fun seeing how a bake-off can rattle these people enough for one of them to commit murder, and then go about hiding the body in the most creative way. It blew my mind when I figured out where it was. I mean, it's not every day it takes 18 years for a body to be discovered. Oh, speaking of which, I guess I neglected to mention the defining attribute of this case, huh? You play as Gregory Edgeworth for half of it. This was his final case, the one he gave a penalty to Von Karma on, which resulted in his death. Excelsior's winner retroactively appears in the first Ace Attorney game because of this. A lot of people tend to fixate on the admittedly pretty mind-blowing fan service here, but I'm more so impressed with the fact that the actual case itself is cool and interesting enough to really live up to its legacy. Its turnabout legacy, Waka Waka. I will admit, one minor issue I kinda have with the structure of jumping back and forth in time is that I always get really into that first segment with Gregory, and then when it cuts back to Miles, it's just a little bit less interesting than what was going on in the past. And I kinda wish we could get back to Gregory already. Don't get me wrong, the Miles stuff does get really good as it goes on. And even at the beginning, I mean, Eustace Winter is here, you can't say that about the Gregory segments. But overall, despite this minor nitpick I have, the structure of this case is genius. Father and son working 2 decades apart to solve the same murder, all as Eddie Fender supports you both. It's an incredibly emotionally resonant case, not just for that beautiful ending cutscene that gets me every time, but because of seeing how far Judy is willing to go for her father figure, Samson Tamatoa. It really stings knowing such a sweet, innocent man was wrongfully locked up for 18 years due to Von Karma's despicable tactics. And damn it, Judy is such a fantastic and interesting character when you learn more about the lengths she'll go to in order to catch the true culprit. Delicia is still my favorite character in the case though, sorry, she's too funny. Oh, and don't even get me started on Gusto. He's admittedly not as present throughout the whole thing as I would have liked, but he more than makes up for that by having one of the rawest final cross-examinations. I mean, he just straight up admits to it, laughing about it in the process since the statute of limitations makes him untouchable. That goes unbelievably hard. What a despicable villain. Taking him down through a variety of loopholes is one of the most satisfying ways to catch a culprit in any of these cases. There are so many other wonderful things I could note, like Larry's honestly really good drawings that turn out to be very helpful to the case, or just the fact that this case has an incredible vibe to it. You never want to leave this candy-coated wonderland with these delightful characters who mostly all care about each other. This case is kind of the anti-Turnabout Big Top. It's an absolute delight through and through. The best non-final case in the series. So congratulations to this case for earning its Turnabout legacy and then some.
That was a parrot. It doesn't even know who Miles Edgeworth is.
Turnabout Goodbyes is kind of the linchpin holding the entirety of Ace Attorney together. So much about what makes the series amazing and what I personally love about the series can be traced back to this case right here. It was the very first time where everything just clicked, where audiences all over the world realized just how exhilarating a court case could be. And it doesn't just earn its laurels for being the first truly exceptional case in the series. It still holds its own against so many cases that follow because of how expertly it fleshes out the character of Miles Edgeworth. This is the game's chance to show you the ace it's had up its sleeve the whole time, revealing that the asshole prosecutor you've done battle with the whole game is really a haunted, emotionally stunted wreck who can't move past this one horrifying ordeal from his childhood. Don't forget DL6. Unraveling the truth about the incident that killed Edgeworth's father and scarred him for life is unbelievably satisfying. And that's not even the main murder case here. The first half is just a good, solid time dealing with the sea monster related antics of Larry and Lotta as you try and pin down what happened on that boat. Manfred von Karma is a prosecutor who absolutely lives up to the hype and feels incredibly intimidating to go up against. But I like how even he's thrown off by Larry swooping in to save the trial and buy Edgeworth some time. Despite not being a huge Larry fan, I gotta say, this is one of his better appearances by far. He gave us the almost Christmas means it wasn't Christmas line. I'll forever be grateful for that. Additionally, finally getting to hear that backstory regarding Phoenix, Miles, and Larry in school, I mean, it's just nothing short of brilliant. I feel like we always kind of take for granted just how perfect this backstory is at establishing who these characters are and why they went on to do the things they do. It's a flawlessly efficient bit of storytelling, which is something you could kind of say about the whole case, really. Not that the case itself is flawless, it definitely suffers a bit in the pacing department by going on for 3 days when you could have condensed it down to 2. And there are obviously crazier final cases with even more mind-boggling stakes later on in the series. But man, it's impossible to deny just how neatly everything clicks together on that last trial day. Von Karma, the unstoppable, ruthless perfectionist who plans for every eventuality and even tases you in order to steal evidence on the last day of your investigation. The fact that he had the gall to do that in the police station. Like, holy shit, this guy is untouchable. So, if the only way to stop him is to cross-examine a parrot, so be it. Except he plans for that and trains the parrot to not say the crucial evidence you needed it to say. Like, how did he even think of that? And just when you think the murder is all wrapped up for good, then we gotta deal with Edgeworth confessing to the accidental murder of his own father! Which, accidental murder isn't actually a thing. You need intent to commit murder, but Ace Attorney's weird, I guess.
When it's an accident, they call it manslaughter.
It really seems like an impossible task to get him out of this. But I love how Phoenix manages to turn things around with what he does best. The power of guessing and bluffing. He maybe gets the sparsest of advice from Mia's ghost here, but I love how, for the most part, this is the first case where you're truly on your own and free of her guidance. It allows both Phoenix and Maya herself to really shine as capable detectives, and it especially makes Maya feel like less of a means to talk to the smarter, better lawyer. This last sequence where you finally corner Von Karma is unbelievably satisfying. It simultaneously gives me chills and makes me want to pump my fist in the air with excitement when Phoenix makes it clear where exactly that missing bullet is. It's a magnificent ending that ties not just this case, but so many events across the rest of the game together. You really feel like so many of the characters have grown from this experience to a degree you never would have expected, especially Edgeworth. It's got great drama and character moments on top of some of the most iconic bits this series has ever had. And it has truly stood the test of time as one of the greatest cases in the series. And somehow, the final cases in the original trilogy only got better from here.
Exhibit A
Maya?
was kidnapped.
The stakes straight up do not get higher than farewell my turnabout. This is an absolutely nail-biting and dramatically potent finish to a game that, quite frankly, needed a case this good in order to get it out of the conversation for the worst Ace Attorney game. It's all worth trudging through Big Top to get to peak here at the end. Honestly, even just the straightforward details of the case itself are enough to make it one of the more interesting ones. Bearing witness to this petty feud between two awful men that resulted in a woman's suicide, leaving behind another woman who tries to keep it all together but is mentally falling apart on the inside. It's a seriously gut-wrenching case to take on. And as much as we all love Edgeworth, holy fucking shit, dude, why did he say to Adrian that he doesn't care if she kills herself? This is the nice version of Edgeworth who's gone through some character development, and he still says this. Oh my god. Oh yeah, Edgeworth is back from the dead. And aside from that one questionable moment of his, I'd honestly have to say this is one of his most interesting and best appearances to date. The sheer gay angst radiating from Phoenix in all of their interactions is palpable. And it's so compelling watching Edgeworth reflect on his journey away, where he discovered what it truly meant to be a prosecutor, and seeing him encourage Phoenix to apply the same mentality. It is a little bit funny though, that despite being the main prosecutor of Justice for All, Franziska really doesn't play that big a role in this case. I love where they leave her character off by the end. That scene at the airport with Edgeworth is one of my favorites in the whole series. But man, it does kind of feel like they didn't really know what to do with her once Edgeworth came back. Oh well. I do think this is one of Edgeworth's best appearances ever, so I think it worked out pretty well. I could honestly say the same about Gumshoe. They even acknowledged by the end that he's the one who really saved the day by finding some crucial evidence. He's an incredibly important character who often goes underappreciated by the narrative, so it's so nice to see him get his flowers in this case. What else happens here? I may have forgotten something. Oh yeah, Maya has been kidnapped by an assassin who will kill her if you don't get a not guilty verdict for the suspect Matt on guard, who it turns out actually did fucking do it. The case honestly does an incredible job of making you go back and forth thinking, did he actually do it? Nah, that's crazy. I mean, it absolutely could have been Adrian Andrews, but eventually, the evidence just overwhelms you and you realize the writing has been on the wall this whole time. This of course leads into that insane moment where Matt shows you his true self. One of the most unforgettable in all of Ace Attorney. The moral dilemma at play here is simply absurd. There's no easy solution for how to deal with this absolute monster. And it truly is a miracle how everything comes together at the end. That is, unless the miracle never happened. That's the best typo in the whole series. Ooh, man. The first day of trial in this case is basically perfect, with Phoenix feeling pressure from all sides to stall as long as he can, and you as a player hoping against all odds there's some way to make it out of this nightmare. Having Maya's life on the line at all times means the tension is through the roof, and you never have time to relax or catch your breath. At least, that's how I remembered this case being before I replayed it. In actuality, while this is obviously still one of the greatest cases in Ace Attorney history, with some of the best trial segments there are, I feel like there's a lot more downtime in the investigation segments than is really necessary. These portions tend to drag a bit, unfortunately, and I feel like this case maybe could have done with one fewer character involved. That's not a general statement either. There is one specific character that I really wish was not in this case. I hate Windy Old Bag. I don't think words can possibly express how much I loathe her. And she eats up so much time in the investigation segments and the first trial day, really dampening the frantic, dramatic tone in the process. Old Bag seriously has no business being in a final case. We already have Will Powers and Lotta Hart returning, which is more than enough. And aside from a single, admittedly funny moment where you break all of Windy's Cyclops immediately, everything involving her in this case is a complete chore. A miserable waste of time. Maybe this is petty of me, though I don't know. I really don't think it is. But the needlessly large presence of Windy in this case is single-handedly why I only have it ranked 3rd place instead of 2nd. I really can't stand her that much. At least I don't have to deal with her in the case ranked above this. With that said, even she can't ruin a case this otherwise stellar. Matt on guard is one of the best villains the series has ever had, and I forgot how cool and menacing Shelley the Killer is in his own right, since I like Canis from Investigations 2 a little bit better. Adrian Andrews is also a fantastic character to center the actual case part of this case around. And by God, very few things in this series hit as hard as getting Matt to claw his face as he begs for that guilty verdict. Nothing short of incredible. So while I do think there's one pesky little stain holding this case back, it's otherwise one of the finest in all of Ace Attorney. And it's one of the first I think about when the topic of all-timer show-stopping cases comes to mind. I guess sometimes the miracle do happen.
You mean he's an imposter?
I'm gonna be honest, there is not a single moment in Turnabout for Tomorrow where I'm not enjoying myself. Dual Destinies may have its flaws as a whole, but it concludes in such a thrilling, bone-chilling, exceptional manner that perfectly concludes the storylines of two of my favorite characters in the whole series, Athena Sykes and Simon Blackwill. The investigation isn't the most extensive, largely because you did most of the investigating in the part 1 to this case, Cosmic Turnabout. But that doesn't stop the stakes from getting ramped up to 11 as Aura Blackwill holds Trucy hostage in order to secure a retrial for her brother, who, by the way, is getting executed tomorrow for his crimes. This is the real driving force of this case that gets me more invested than almost any other can. The fact that one of the all-time greatest and most compelling characters in the series is seemingly throwing his life away, and only you can uncover the truth that'll save him. And you have to do it without further implicating Athena, who's on trial for the current crime. And you have to deal with Apollo reeling from the murder of his best friend and deciding he can't fully trust Athena. I love when the loyalties are fractured between the main characters simply because Apollo doesn't know Athena that well yet. It's a lot like Luke going against you in court in the Layton game. This case is so riveting because everyone is going through such extreme emotional turmoil. And the dynamics at play are also just so good here. I love how the opening is a Phoenix and Trucy investigation. It's shocking they never did that before or since. We obviously get the grand return of Miles Edgeworth, whose banter with Phoenix is just as good as ever. Seriously, there's too many great quotes and exchanges between the two of them to count in this case. Athena and Simon work together very well at one point. It's great finally seeing the trio all together at the defendant's bench. Aura is gay. And of course, the extreme dread at the circumstances of this case is tied together perfectly thanks to the impending threat of the Phantom. Who is this guy? How are we gonna catch this seemingly inhuman monster? I don't know, man, but at least we'll have Bobby Fulbright to help us along in this process. Thank God he's helping save lives by ordering the emergency ladder to be lowered, which also happens to be the method which the Phantom used to escape. Hey, wait a minute. Just when I started to like this motherfucker in the previous case. Unbelievable. The reveal that the goofy paragon of justice, Bobby Fulbright, is the most ruthless villain in the whole game just gobsmacked me. I think the entire concept of the Phantom being emotionless is so brilliant because the whole game revolves around Athena reading people's emotions. And Fulbright seemed to have the biggest emotions of all. So that moment where you finally use the mood matrix on him and see none of the faces lighting up is just so creepy. But even that doesn't compare to the first time he makes that blank expression. At first, I lolled, and then I serioused. And before that point, he even still keeps you second guessing yourself with the whole, I'm not the Phantom kidnapped my family routine. Like, obviously I kinda knew he was full of shit there, but I was still asking myself, what if maybe he's not? It seriously makes for one of the most exciting and dangerous feeling experiences in the entire Ace Attorney series. I know a lot of people do not like the Phantom, and yeah, obviously he lacks a compelling motivation that makes a lot of other Ace Attorney culprits so satisfying to take down. But there's also something so satisfying about catching this inhuman beast in the act, and ensuring that the Dark Age of the Law will finally come to a close. Yeah, the Dark Age of the Law stuff is still a little bit silly, but it's more so the rest of the game at fault here, and less so this case. I basically have no problems with the Phantom as a villain when he's fully in the Bobby Fulbright disguise. When he starts ripping the masks off and we get the glorious return of Aristotle Means, kind of, okay, yeah, that's maybe a little bit silly. But it's just so unhinged and alien in its own right that it still works for me. It also really isn't that long of a segment, and it concludes with a similarly odd and creepy breakdown that goes out with a bang. One other point about Fulbright is that I've seen a lot of people express disappointment that it was all a facade and we never met the real him. But I never saw it that way. I mean, it seems pretty clear that the Phantom is mimicking Fulbright's actual persona, so we pretty much know exactly what he would have been like. I don't mind. I still think we get the full Bobby Fulbright experience throughout the game, and he makes for a really novel twist villain as well. I honestly barely have anything bad to say about this case. I mean, it just has some of the highest stakes of all time, and too many breathtaking moments to count. From Simon pretending to believe the Phantom in order to allow Athena a chance to read his heart, to Edgeworth delivering the news that the real Bobby Fulbright is dead, to the Phantom spouting his epic catchphrase, the ends justify the means, to that one super satisfying part I cannot get out of my head. Phoenix, Apollo, and Athena all pointing in unison at the Phantom, demanding that he face his fear head on with his own true face. It truly doesn't get any better than this. I mean, it does, obviously, there's still one more case. But I absolutely can't deny that this is my runner-up. It was close with Farewell My Turnabout, I will admit that. You guys might think I'm insane for putting this above that one. But have you considered the fact that Farewell My Turnabout has Windy Olbag in it? Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, that's kind of the only reason I ranked it lower. I genuinely hate Windy Olbag that much. But I adore both of these cases, and while it was close, I just can't deny how powerful it is to save Athena and Simon and fulfill both of their intertwined destinies. But with that said, yeah, you know what number one is. As much as I hate to be cliche, there really was no other option for the top spot on this list. Bridge to the Turnabout is in a league of its own within this series. This is a masterful conclusion to the original trilogy that ties every major character and plot thread across all three games together in one dramatic, exciting, electric final case. It's hard to really know where to start since every good thing about this case has already been said. So I guess to follow up on my tying everything together comments, it is ridiculously satisfying to finally get closure on the status of Maya's mother that had been left ambiguous since the first game. And it obviously ties perfectly with the behind the scenes evil machinations of Morgan from the second game. I kinda like how she doesn't appear here. It makes her come across even more as the sinister puppet master, and it allows Dahlia to remain in the villainous spotlight. Oh man, she's somehow even more intimidating now that she's dead. What an absolutely crazy and unexpected reveal. One that pairs so nicely with the reveal that Iris is actually a real person and not just Dahlia in disguise. It's so cool how the game primes you to mistrust her since she used a fake name in the previous case. It makes the reveal sufficiently unexpected, even if you do realize after a while that it has to be true. And for all this case's batshit crazy memorable moments, I also love how atmospheric and unnerving it is. The area surrounding the temple is such a rich location to investigate. I adore the quiet sense of dread before the big bridge-burning disaster takes place. The fact that not only Maya, but the 9-year-old Pearl is missing throughout a lot of the investigation. That significantly raises the stakes and makes you terrified for her safety. Oh, what about your opportunity to play as Edgeworth and get a taste of what he gets up to in his investigation sub-series? Having him go up against Franziska in court is a real treat with how it follows up in their final scene from the previous game. How about Larry actually being pretty useful and contributing that iconic drawing of the bridge to the case? How about the fact that Pearl, who gave you the Magatama, is the last character in the trilogy you use it on? Or how Maya ends up being the final witness in the entire trilogy? Little things like that feel so well thought out and conclusive. Okay, maybe I'm talking about too many little things right now and not really covering the big picture. My bad. This case is such a deliciously atmospheric and sinister nightmare where so many things go wrong. There's a murder, the bridge burning down, Maya and Pearl going missing, and Phoenix falling hundreds of feet into freezing cold water and having to go to the hospital. He kind of gets better way too quickly, but I can live with that. From there, it's really beautiful seeing Edgeworth, Gumshoe, Larry, and Franziska pick up the slack while Phoenix is out of commission. And unraveling this mystery that revolves around the Fae clan and spirit channeling is really satisfying, if a bit tragic. In the endgame, when Maya takes the stand and tearfully says that she doesn't want anything to do with the Fae family anymore, that has always struck out to me as such a deeply sad moment. This is a character who's been through the ringer more than anyone else throughout this entire trilogy, and to see her reduced to what might be her lowest mental state yet is absolutely devastating. But unfortunately, we need to press on and uncover the truth behind everything, even if it means Maya can no longer cover for the misguided, selfish actions of Godot. The truth finally comes out here in the most heartbreaking way. Godot isn't a monster deep down, but he let himself sink to such a low mental point that he very much acted like one. Stabbing Dahlia without a second thought, even though any rational person would understand that you'd be murdering Misty, or God forbid, Pearl. All this because he and Misty hatched the stupidest plan imaginable that very obviously went wrong and dragged Iris down with them. That's not a problem with the case, by the way. I think it speaks to the real tragedy of these characters. Misty's inability to face Maya after all this time, and her belief that Maya will be safer if they stay apart. But mainly, Godot's intense, completely irrational, burning hatred for Phoenix. Obviously, this all could have gone down so much better if Godot reached out to him. But that's the beauty of the character, and how his arrogance and inability to face himself is his most crippling flaw. Phoenix didn't let Mia die. Godot wasn't there to protect her. He underestimated Dahlia and it left him in a coma, where he couldn't see red on white or red white. Dude, the localizer struck gold with that. I don't know how that lined up so perfectly. But all of Godot's frustration, all his anger, all his pent-up loathing that he absolutely refused to direct at himself, all of it had to go somewhere, and Phoenix was the perfect target. I mean, Dahlia was dead and Red White was in prison. I don't know who else you can get mad at if you refuse to be mad at yourself. Godot is a frustrating character, and I can't say I fully sympathize with him after all the heinous shit he does due to his pride and ego. But it's impossible not to feel a little sorrow at how he lost everything in an instant, and how broken he is as a result of Dahlia's evil actions. Speaking of which, I don't even know where to start with the final confrontation with Dahlia, as you essentially perform an exorcism on Maya to drive this demon out once and for all. Dahlia is a character who endured a lot of heinous shit in her childhood, but nonetheless came out of it as one of the most vengeful and vicious antagonists in Ace Attorney history. This case is such a perfect culmination of the villainy she's committed across the entire game. An overarching antagonist so good, they made this style of villain the norm for every subsequent game in the series. Even when she's dead, she continues to haunt the protagonists, including her fellow dead person, Mia. And this perfectly climaxes with the unforgettable final confrontation the two of them share. One of the best quotes in all of Ace Attorney is, "For all of eternity, you'll have to remain as Dahlia Hawthorne, a miserable, pathetic, weak creature who can never win at anything. And for you, there is no escape from that. No hope of freedom. Since the day you were executed, the narrow bridge that once stretched out in front of you has burnt to a crisp." She absolutely cooked her, oh my god. That, coupled with the demonic breakdown right afterwards, is a moment for the ages. One of the all-time greatest scenes in Ace Attorney history. And it's not even the best moment in the case! Obviously, the best moment is the final confrontation with Godot. It gives me chills every time I see it. Sometimes when I haven't replayed the game in a while, I'll just pull up a playthrough on YouTube and skip to this climactic moment just to relive it. Actually, I also do that for the Dahlia breakdown, to be fair. But regardless, slowly putting every last piece of the puzzle together until you're ready to demand Godot reveal the wounds beneath his mask, I wouldn't trade that thrill for anything in the world. And Godot makes this moment extra special. From finally understanding that Mia is living on through Phoenix, to laying everything out on the table regarding his inability to take responsibility for what happened to Mia, to, of course, these must be my tears. And the only time a lawyer can cry is when it's all over. Never once did I think I would go against the grain in terms of deciding what the best case in all of Ace Attorney was. Everyone is right. Bridge to the Turnabout is a miraculous feat of storytelling. An incredible culmination of an entire trilogy's worth of characters and plot threads that also provides one of the most elaborate and engaging murder plots in the series, one of the all-time greatest villains in the series, and some of the most potent and well-earned emotional beats I've ever experienced in a video game. This case right here is exactly why I love Ace Attorney. It is an absolute tour de force from start to finish that runs the gamut through every possible emotion this series makes me feel. It's funny, it's terrifying, it's mysterious, it's eerie, it's exciting as all hell, and a real tearjerker to boot. Frankly, nothing else remotely compares to this one. My easy pick for the best case in all of Ace Attorney. And that's the ranking. Thank you for joining me on one of the most fun and satisfying videos I've ever had the pleasure of making. Every single case on this list has at least something worthwhile. Even the second case in Greatest Attorney 1 has the Dance of Deduction segment. Can't call that case an F tier when that bit brings me a great amount of joy. Replaying this magnificent series was a dream come true. I honestly can't express enough what Ace Attorney means to me. And if you haven't, I would highly recommend checking all of these games out. Even Investigations 1. It's worth it, occasionally. They're all available on modern platforms except the Lighten game, and you really owe it to yourself to experience everything the series has to offer. Now, all that's left to do is hope against hope that Ace Attorney 7 gets announced. It's gotta happen, right? Capcom keeps promoting Ace Attorney. They've re-released basically every game they have the full rights for. They revived Mega Man, which seemed even more dead, so how hard is it to revive a visual novel series? It's probably not even that expensive to produce these games. Come on, use your Pragmata and Resident Evil Requiem money and throw us a bone. I swear to God, Capcom, I will destroy your headquarters if I don't get it. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and good night, Japanifornia. So, what did you guys think of my opinions?
Boo! You